Okie dokie. President Taylor, we can see her. Vice President Cudill.
I'm here.
Me, I'm here. Trustee Calvert.
Here.
Trustee Church.
Here.
Trustee Nicolette.
Here.
Trustee Thigpen.
Here.
Yes, we're all here.
Okay, we'll do is we'll go ahead and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll just go ahead and lead us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, 1.04 public comment. JJ, have we received any public comment for this meeting?
We have not.
Thank you. Okay, 1.05 action to adopt the agenda. If there are no adjustments to the agenda, looks like we just have one item. I'll entertain a motion to adopt.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Trustee Thigpen and a second by Trustee Minetto. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Okay, that motion passes unanimously. We'll go ahead and move into 2.01, which is the meat of our discussion today. Superintendent McNeil, you kicking us off?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, President Caudle. Good morning, trustees. Happy to see you all. Good morning, leadership team. The most amazing leadership team on the planet. Just a little bit of pride right there. I hope you all were able to watch and enjoy our State of Education address last night. I thought that was a wonderful representation of all the work that we've put forward over the last several months, all for the care and academic care for our students, staff, and families. So a huge shout out to our communications team as well, who put a lot of time and effort in bringing our vision for that State of Education address to life. So thank you to Megan and her entire team.
Superintendent McNeil, can I stop you for a second?
Absolutely.
So for trustees, since this is I think our first Zoom meeting together, on Zoom, if at any point you have a question, if you could please raise your virtual hand. It's a blue button, and then I will be monitoring that, and then I'll call on you as we go down. So if you could not just speak, just raise your hand, and then we'll get you as we go through. Thank you, Superintendent McNeil.
I don't see that on the button. I see chat.
I don't have a blue button either. And it doesn't even say, oh wait, it says more next to my name, rename.
Is that feature
Can you guys hear me?
We can
Yes.
hear you,
I can
Andrew.
hear you.
If you can hear me, if you go over to in the chat function, you see all this stuff down there that all the things. It should be. Oh yeah, I don't see raise your hand either.
Yeah.
It's under reactions. You have to hit reactions and then raise hand.
Under reactions now. Okay.
Oh,
Update.
reactions.
Yep,
Well,
under reactions. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, did they change that? Huh.
Yeah, I've never seen it there, but that's okay. We know where it is.
Now we know.
Okay.
All right. If you wouldn't mind, Vice President Caudle, can you certainly continue on? I'm trying to work on my last piece, and I'll be good to go.
Okay, thank you, President Taylor. I'll go ahead and keep monitoring that. The reactions are temporary, so when they show up, they disappear. I don't know, John, if that's a feature you could turn on and get that blue hand raised back. That would be helpful. But Superintendent McNeil, why don't you go ahead and continue?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Vice President Caudle. And just for a little bit of housekeeping items for today, This work session is being live streamed. It will also be recorded, so we'll be able to post it, obviously, on our website. It is scheduled until 1 p.m. So we will kind of track this, and depending on the timing and the engagement, we're going to schedule a break from 11 to 11:30. But obviously, you know, if you have to take care of biological needs, please go ahead and turn your camera off, mute your sound, and go ahead and then just take care of your biological needs. So with us today, I'm going to do some introductions just for the record. I have our Deputy Superintendent, Debbie Beiersdorf.
Morning.
And I am going down the line. We have our Chief Accountability Officer, Mr. Ben Hayes.
Good morning.
We have our Chief of Police, Jason Trevino.
Good morning.
We have our Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Mark Mathers.
Good morning.
We have our Chief Counsel, Neil Rombardo. He said good morning earlier. I know he's there. We have our Chief Strategies Officer, Dr. Paul LaMarca.
Good morning.
We have our Chief Human Resources Officer, Miss Emily Ellison.
Morning, everyone.
You all are switching on me. We have Area Superintendent, Mr. Joe Ernst.
Good morning.
We have our Interim Chief Communications and Community Engagement Officer, Miss Megan Downs.
Good morning.
We have our Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Pete Edzard.
Good morning.
Let's see here. Who am I forgetting? I feel like I'm forgetting somebody. Was Gina Curtis on here somewhere?
Troy.
Dr. Troy Park, sorry, Chief Academic Officer. All right. Trustees, last night and on our board docs, you have the Washoe County School District Bridge Reporting Year document, which you all received also at your orientation. That is our bridge strategic plan for the year of 2020 through 2021. As you note on the cover sheet of that document, and I'll see if JJ is going to be able to bring that, oh, right there. So it should be, you want to share your screen? There we are. So importantly, for our board and for the public, the circles that you see on the screen are reporting timelines for our bridge strategic plan. So just this past, back on January 12th, we updated the board on our graduation rates, our college and career diploma, and our career and technical pathways of study. That was back on January 12th. And then as you will see on the February 9th board meeting, we actually have another strategic plan metric update that will be around the partnerships and trustee relationships. That's really around communications. That's on February 9th. And then going into March, we go into school safety and emergency operations. And so that will be another opportunity to update the board on the metrics of our bridge strategic plan. The reason that we felt that it was a good use of our board meetings time is that we wanted to have a pathway in order to report metrics on a consistent basis for our board, so that our board of trustees would be updated on a regular basis around how we are doing on our strategic plan and the metrics. So although we will not be doing a deep dive today into the adopted bridge reporting outline, if you do have questions regarding targets or metrics on the strategic plan, as we go into our presentation today around each goal, If you have a particular question on a specific goal, I would ask that our trustees ask the question related to that goal at that particular time. Okay. So I'm going to ask JJ if she would now bring up the PowerPoint on our bridge. And so today's work session is our first work session on our recommendation for our board to adopt a 2-year strategic plan that is really going to be focused around response and recovery. And the reason that this is the superintendent's recommendation as well as our team's recommendation is we felt that it was a very good time span. As you all know, we are dealing with a global pandemic, but in conjunction to that, we are also dealing with very important fiscal issues and going into a biennium of a legislative session. And there's a lot of unknowns in the sector of finances at this point in time. So we felt that a 2-year plan was something that was nimble enough that we would be able to change if needed, but also gave us a good span of time in order to respond and importantly recover. And interestingly enough, yesterday we had an extended academic leadership team, and our coordinator of counseling, Catherine Loudon, said something that resonated with me. And that is, we are actually going down parallel paths. We are responding to the pandemic, and we are actually recovering from the pandemic at the same time. And so that's the beauty of this plan, is that we are going to be putting forth goals that speak to that over the next couple of years. So if we can go ahead and advance the slide, JJ. So for the board, and importantly for our new trustees, these are actually the board's vision and mission that have been adopted into the strategic plan. So if you'd like to just take a couple of minutes and read the vision for the Washoe County School District and the mission for the Washoe County School District in relation to our strategic plan. So at this point in time, I am not making a recommendation to change the vision and mission of the board's strategic plan. So that is not within this recommendation. JJ, would you advance the slide? So importantly, the board adopted back in 2010 and then carried over into the 2015 strategic plan, as well as into the 2020, as well as now into the Bridge strategic plan, core beliefs. And these core beliefs drive everything that we do within our school district. All students can learn and be successful. The achievement gap can be eliminated by ensuring every student is challenged to learn at or above grade level. Effective teachers and principals, dedicated support staff, rigorous curriculum, culturally responsive practices, measurable outcomes, timely interventions, ongoing monitoring and assessment, collaboration, professional development, and a culture of continuous improvement ensure classroom success for all students. Superior performance will be achieved through clear goals that set high expectations and standards for all students and employees. Student academic success and character building require family, student, school, and community engagement. Leadership and passion, together with accountability and transparency, are keys to reform and success. A strong education system ensures that the well-being of a community. And so those are the beliefs adopted by the board within the strategic plan. And once again, there is no recommendation to change those core beliefs. JJ, if you would advance the slide. And so today's presentation will really focus around the 5 goal areas. We are not recommending going into a 2-year strategic plan built around response and recovery. We are not bringing forth any recommendations to change the goals. It's more as to the work that would be done within each one of the goals. Within each one of our goals, we have a goal owner. And so for goal 1, that is centered around our academic leadership team. Goal 2 is headed by our human resources department. Goal 3 is really around community engagement, so communications. Goal 4 is around operational systems that are effective, and that is led by Pete Etchart and Mark Mathers. And goal 5 is a shared goal between the Office of Strategies as well as our school police. So I'll pause just for about 30 seconds for everyone to take a look at those goals. They should be well known. JJ, if you'd advance the slide. So
I have one quick question, and I'm not getting a way to put my hand up down there.
Okay, all right, go ahead, Trustee Church.
Going way back to, I think it was the mission statement, it talked about college and career. I'm just wondering if it was college or career would make more sense, or it's not, it's just semantics, but college and career, or college or career.
Right now we have college and career.
I mean, some students opt to go into the trades or the military or other than college. That's just very minor. I just saw that.
No, but it's an important distinction. Appreciate that. And that's, you know, and that's something that we'll talk a little bit more as we get into the goals, because you're absolutely right. It's not just one path.
Sorry to interrupt.
No worries. So the pathway to positive progress, as you all know, was an effort when I became interim superintendent back in July and August of 2019. This was a systems approach to what we wanted to be doing within our school district. I won't go too into detail, but as you can see, there were pretty substantial areas that we wanted to make sure that we addressed. We know that special education was an area where we did intense focus, and we continue to do intense focus along with our partners of West Ed. And the Board of Trustees has received and will continue to receive updates around those efforts. Obviously, we have a lot going on in the technology area. You all will be having, we took it off this last Tuesday agenda, but you all will be seeing the strategic plan really having to do with sustainability, so that we are able to provide technology not only for our students, but importantly for our staff. And then obviously we've done a lot of work around inclusive decision making. This is an organization that does not believe in a top-down approach. We have done a lot of work on task forces and committees to really hear our teachers, principals, students, in important voices. That when we do make decisions, that we really do have input on what those decisions are going to be. There's always room for improvement in that area. As you all know, we are moving about 900 miles an hour with a lot of initiatives right now. And so sometimes, you know, we miss a couple of opportunities to have those inclusive decisions, and then we learn from that and we move on. Financial sustainability, obviously a huge effort within our school district. You all just had a board presentation from Mark Mathers on the first of many updates around the fiscal year 22 budget. And, you know, Mr. Mathers and I, as well as leadership team, have had a lot of discussions around really making plans for a 2 to 3 year plan, so that it's not just a 1 year budget cycle. And so we're working on that. And I know Mark and his team are really digging into the details around that. Capital projects, a lot of work around capital projects. We will continue to provide updates to the board on that. And that's one of the areas, goal 4, which Mr. Etchart will be touching on today. But again, just a lot of work around capital projects and a lot of good work. And then obviously culture and values. And importantly, at our next board meeting on February 9th, we are bringing forth the action plan having to do with the steps behind the anti-racism resolution that the board adopted back in October. And so very important work that is going to be done around inclusivity, equity, and diversity within our school district. So I'm going to pause there and see if there are any questions from the trustees relegated to the pathway. Vice President Cottle, if you can help me monitor hands.
Yeah, we're trying to figure that out. That
Oh.
was the raise hand feature is not currently available. So
Okay, I'm just going to scan through here. I don't see any hands from trustees. If I'm missing you, yell out. I see Diane shaking her head. There's Jackie. All right. Perfect. All right, we're going to move forward. So this is really awesome. Awesome is a technical word. So Ben and his team have done a tremendous amount of work around making data easy and easy to interpret for all stakeholders. And this is one of those areas that Ben and his team just excel at. And the Envision Washoe County School District, WCSD, this is a compilation of our strategic plan. And it was a system put into place that allows the public and the board to monitor progress on how we're doing within those particular goals. A lot of time and effort has been put into the building of this particular website. And so I don't want to steal his thunder. So I'm going to have Ben just orient you, not a deep dive, but just kind of an overview on the website.
Thank you, Dr. McNeil. JJ, can I share my screen? And I'll go into the website. Can everybody see that? So hopefully nobody's expecting any thunder from me, but we built this so kind of as part of the effort to be transparent and kind of timely, and so the public can dive into our progress on our strategic plan. And we can, this is built for the the pathway to progress, positive progress, as Dr. McNeil just said, but we can adapt it to whichever strategic plan we have. Again, the point is just to show our data and our performance as we go along with some context. So as you can see, and Dr. McNeil already pointed out, we have the timeline for reporting, and then every time we do report, we'll put it in this website. So for instance, back in October, the academic leadership team presented on kind of academic data, October 27th. And then January, we also went over more academic data. And in between there were some other goals that were gone over. So all of that is reflected in the website here, hopefully pretty easy to navigate. And then the user can just click down to see how we're doing. So for instance, this is objective 1.1. And you can see 1.1 is graduation rates. It shows our past performance, current performance, and it also provides a little bit of context. So areas of success and barriers that we've come across. Smarter Balance, as you know, there was a waiver last winter, so we don't have data this year for that, but we still kind of have the barriers that we've talked about, and on down the line. So for percent of our students achieving their sufficient core credits through 10th grade, that shows up that we had a little bit of success last year. And going forward, there's going to be some barriers this year. So I won't go through all of them, but you can see that and easily kind of close it up when you're done with it. So if the public or the trustees are interested in just going straight into human resources or family engagement, they can always move straight over to that. So again, I won't go too far into it, but I just wanted the trustee, wanted the trustees to know that there will be kind of a reporting mechanism for whatever strategic plan we have. We can definitely shift. JT Stark on my team does an amazing job with this website. We can adapt it to what the trustees would like to present to the public. If there's anything you'd like to move it around differently or present it in a more friendly or detailed way, we can do that. So Dr. McNeil and the leadership team and I just wanted to, again, orient you to that, to see we can be transparent and also provide some reasons for why we have strategic plan indicators, why they're important to us, and how we're doing on them. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Dr. McNeil.
Thank you very much. And any feedback from our trustees?
I'm sorry, you couldn't see the raise hand thing. I just want to say, I think this is a great tool for transparency. Ben, where, and I might miss this, where on the Washington Schools website can people navigate to this new website?
Yes, so we haven't really launched it publicly, but we'll put up a link today up for it. On the, I think the bottom of the front page, there's a link to, if I can, I'll share my screen one more time, to WCSDdata.net. And while I have your attention real quick, we kind of have launched this website to kind of be as transparent as we can. So at the bottom of the district's front page, there's a link to this. And then we'll put a strategic plan kind of button along here where you kind of down here where you see graduation, smarter balance, social and emotional learning. And we are WCSD. So we'll make sure we get a prominent link up there. We just wanted to show it to you first.
Any other feedback? So what might help is if everybody would like to turn off their camera, and then if you have a question, you will just pop up, and then that way that'll help Andrew monitor if we've got a question. Thank you for that strategy, Dr. Lamarca.
Can someone just wave their hand?
I don't know how to turn off the video, the without stopping the whole video.
Okay, then don't touch anything.
Yeah, don't do it then. Don't. I mean, I'm just wondering if someone raising their hand could suffice.
I think the issue is when the screen's shared, I can't see everybody.
Just move it over. If you move it over.
Yeah, I'll work on it. Yeah,
Oh no, you know what? I can't. I can't be seen right now even. So you do what you need to do for you, Vice President Cottle. Make it happen.
okay, we can just continue.
I just put my hand up and it's staying up at the moment. I don't know how long it's going to stay up.
Yes.
May I leave it up until we figure out how long it's going to stay up?
No,
Again, did you?
No.
I mean, well,
Okay.
no, some of us have it, some of us don't. It's kind of a mess.
Oh,
We can just
okay.
continue.
That doesn't help at all.
Do you have a question, Trustee Minetto? No, okay.
Okay, perfect. Any other trustees have any feedback for Ben on the metrics website?
Trustee Nicolette, do you have a question?
I was just going to say that I was fooling around in the participants page, I guess, area. And on the very bottom, it has lower hand or raise hand. So we can lower or raise our hand, but you have to go into participants. And then at the very bottom, you can lower your hand or raise your hand. Do you see that?
Does everybody have that? It's possible. I don't see because I'm a host, but so if you see that, go ahead and do it. If you can't see it, then just wave.
It'll be fine. We'll get through it.
On my system, I use a Mac. On my system, it's under reactions, like Kurt said. It's just one of mine. Raise hand. It's up. You can see it now.
Yes.
It like this. It might be under participant. Sometimes it's under chat, and you have to go to more. So
If you can do that, because it jumps you to the top of the page and it sticks out to me, and then I'll absolutely get you.
Perfect.
So,
Okay,
so as trustees, we should leave our cameras on as much as we can. I'm going to keep working on mine.
Yeah,
I might have to jump off and jump back on and reset the camera. So just know if I do that, that's what I'm down to. I've done everything else I know to do. So
Trustee Church is still online, but I don't see myself anymore. I did something wrong, but I'm here.
I
We
see you. We see you. Okay, JJ, if you would share the screen again. And if you go up to the slide of reopening schools, one slide forward. So if you all will recall, the board has adopted core beliefs. And in parallel to those core beliefs, when we were planning to reopen our schools this fall, the team, along with many sectors of our different types of task forces, the teachers and teaching and learning committee, reopening committee, came up with guiding principles. And those are the guiding principles that we have used and put into place and guide our decisions around everything that we do as we are still navigating the effects of the pandemic. So whether it was around the models, the academic models that we put forward to the board as far as hybrid, full in-person or full distance, whether it had to do with grading, whether it had to do with mitigation strategies, these were all efforts that we put into place, and these are the guiding principles. And we felt that these guiding principles are important for the trustees to be able to see and to embrace as we go into the response and recovery for a 2-year plan. Because along with your core beliefs and these guiding principles, they will really be our guide rails along with our goals on everything that we do going forward for the next 2 years. So all decisions based on a foundation of do no harm. Ensure our students, family, and staff basic needs are being met. Ensure equitable access for all students. Maintain high academic expectations for all students. Follow as practical all federal, state, and local health-related guidelines. And I think a great example of following these guiding principles was really brought to life last night in the State of Education address. So you saw our re-engagement efforts, the food security efforts around nutrition services, our transportation team, curriculum and academics, family schools partnership, equity and diversity, everyone coming together in order to do the best for our students and staff and families. So any questions around our guiding principles? I got to tell you, I told Vanjie when I saw that picture of that little one, I just, oh my goodness gracious. He is cute as a button. All righty, let's move on. So here's our basic proposal as we go in again to our work session today, response to recovery. 2-year action plan, which will address system-wide academic recovery from a global pandemic. The plan will be focused on narrowing achievement gaps through an equity framework. And although it is not spelled out in here, obviously a huge part of that, and we've talked about that, is the mental health and mental health for our students and staff. That's a big part of this 2-year recovery plan. And then obviously embedded within all of this are the goals. And so we're going to go ahead and turn the page. We can move our slide forward. And so now we're really getting into the nuts and bolts of the presentation, and each one of our goal owners, who I announced earlier this morning, are going to walk through each one, and what their direction was provided was that to come up with 3 very high level strategies embedded within each one of these goals. There are not any metrics. There are not initiatives tied to any of these at this point in time. And so I want to stress that to the trustees. That's what our work going forward. If the trustees embrace a 2-year recovery plan, that's the work that this team will be doing. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Debbie Beiersdorf, who's going to lead around goal 1.
Thank you, Superintendent McNeil. And again, good morning, trustees. Very nice to see you this morning. So I'm going to ask our academic leadership team to now pop back up if they haven't, and just reintroduce to you Ben Hayes, who is our Chief Accountability Officer, Dr. Paul Lamarca, who is our Chief Strategies Officer, Dr. Troy Parks, who's our Chief Academic Officer, and Joe Ernst, who is one of our co-lead area superintendents. And we're going to kind of divide and conquer these next few slides. So again, as Dr. McNeil stated, the ALT team worked together to identify 3 high-level strategies that we believe will do us well over the next 2 years as we continue on the academic recovery road that we are, to be honest with you, on already. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Joe Ernst to start us off.
Thank you, Deputy Superintendent Beiersdorf. Good morning, everybody. We'll start here with academic growth. And you can see that the focus is on the academic recovery. And I like how Dr. McNeil started us out this morning. Talk about the responding and the recovery happening simultaneously. And so what we have right now is really the efforts to get the accurate understanding of student learning. And there's a number of assessments that are being used by schools. And those assessments, really, there's kind of 2 categories. You have your formative assessments, assessments that give teachers immediate information on where students are, where gaps might be, and then the ability to go into those quickly. And then you have those longer term summative assessments, such as an access testing for the English language learners and their overall competencies, and gives us an understanding of their growth over a longer period of time. And so while those assessments are being used, certainly when learning gaps are identified, interventions are provided. Interventions might include some things like phonics first down in the early primary grades, with a real emphasis on phonics, phonemic awareness, those types of things. And then as you move up through the grades, there's leveled literacy interventions that are used. And often these students are identified through our MTSS process, multi-tiered systems of support, really looking to make sure that we are helping students in every manner. Then you also have the plans going forward to support our summer learning. Again, really that focus on academic recovery, really assessing what our individual needs are and what those systemic needs are, and really putting a plan in place. So that's a little bit around the academic growth side of things and that first bullet point. So with that, I would like to turn it over next to Dr. Lamarca.
Thank you, Joe. Vice President Cottle, Dr. McNeil, for the record, Paul Lamarca. So I think you'll find this second bullet to be very consistent with the guiding principles that Dr. McNeil just shared. And we're an educational institution, and we know that at the end of the day, we want our kids to graduate and be ready for what comes next, college and careers. Not that they do both, but they're equally prepared for both. But we have to understand that academic learning doesn't occur in a vacuum. It occurs in a context. And so here we're talking about the need to ensure a safe, positive climate, equipping students with the social and emotional competencies to be resilient through accelerated learning and to maintain well-being. As we focus on academic recovery, this becomes even more important if, in fact, students have suffered some learning loss, or they're a little behind, or there are potentially some gaps that could be growing because of sort of this COVID situation. We need to strengthen their ability to take risks, feel good, persevere, succeed, and that's going to enable them to kind of accelerate their academic learning. You're going to find that this particular bullet is going to have, you're going to see it essentially again under a couple of other goals. And that's just another point I will briefly make, is that all these goals fit together to support students and staff. So I think with that, I am turning it over to Ms. Beiersdorf.
Thank you, Paul. So I'm going to speak just real briefly about that third bulleted point, which is not going to come as a surprise to our trustees following our meeting earlier this week. But very important in the road to recovery and beyond is for our school district to implement a strong and sustained distance learning model that provides choice for our families, for our students who engage better or want the option of an online environment. So of course, that is a further expansion of North Star. And I'm pleased to report that work started early Wednesday morning following Tuesday evening's meeting. And we're plugging away to make that a reality. So thank you again, trustees, for your leadership with that. So I'm going to ask JJ to forward the slide, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Parks.
Debbie, just really quick, I'm just going to ask if there's any questions from the trustees. So if we can, there we go. Thanks, JJ.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and ask a question real quick. If I'm getting ahead of myself, just tell me, but I would like to hear your initial thoughts. So on academic recovery, I'm curious on where your thoughts are and how we're going to figure out what is deficient. Because if we don't know what we're actually trying to tackle, it'll be hard to tackle it. And then on the resources side, I'm curious if the district is thinking on a global level or an individual school level. Because I know when I talk to principals on my visits, some schools are dealing with different things. So what's plaguing Spanish Springs Elementary may be very different than Lemon Valley Elementary. And as far as where students could be deficient, could be socioeconomic, could be so many different things. We're such a diverse community. So I'm curious on your initial thoughts on where you're thinking we should go with this.
So I'll go ahead and start, and then Debbie, if you want to, or anyone on our team wants to jump in. So as far as how to measure, that's kind of been the question on a national level, and I appreciate it. Right now we're still kind of in a holding pattern with the Biden administration to see if there is going to be a waiver for the SBAC assessment for this year. Obviously, as Joe Ernst was speaking about earlier, we do have our MAP assessments, MAP MAP assessments, as well as our benchmark assessments that are more on a formative. And that's important, Vice President Caudill, because that allows our teachers to be able to see where a child's strengths and areas of improvement. And tied in with this, and it's, so you're a little bit ahead of the game, but what Dr. Parks is going to talk about in just a few minutes around professional learning communities really speaks to this cycle, what we're talking about as far as data and how teachers are going to be able to use data on a school by school level. So Debbie, do you want to take anything from there as well?
Maybe if I could just add a little bit more, and I think Troy will talk about it on the next slide as well, is that we are anchored and we are governed by content standards, academic standards. And I think our trustees, many of you have heard us talk to you about that before, the essential standards work that is happening. And when we headed into this school year, and again, I think Troy will speak to this, we very, very early on realized that how we were going to best track the academic success or the academic challenges for our students was identifying what we call essential standards. What are those standards of learning that our students must have when they exit a grade level or a particular course or class at the secondary level? And then tying that back to what Joe was saying about formative assessments, how do we measure whether our students have mastered those standards or not. And then what do we do when they don't? That quick intervention. I think also that from what we understand so far, when it comes to funding that's available, and as CFO Mark Mathers and our budget director Jeff Bozzo talked about on Tuesday with our trustees, funding that may be coming to school districts as well to help with interventions and summer jumpstart programs, and then heading into next school year as well. Summer's not going to fix the challenges that we know that our students and our teachers are experiencing. And if I could wrap it then all around is what Dr. Lamarca talked about, the social emotional competencies that our students need in order to be able to be ready to learn. So.
No, I definitely appreciate that. And I know that this is the big challenge, because if you're a fourth grade teacher next year, some of your students would have had their second grade year interrupted, their entire third grade year interrupted. So I think that those professional learning communities are really important to help teachers kind of deal with different situations that they will see. And I think as a board, that's why our budget discussion was so important, to really make sure that we can use these federal dollars to tackle these issues we're going to see over 2 years. And then the last point I'll make, I also think the academic portion is this is what we're on. This is the meat. But I will also say that we're going to have quite a few students in our district that on a social level are going to be behind, especially K-3. They just don't have the development that they would have had, because maybe could have been on distance learning for a year and a half. And so I think at that level, it's something that we're going to have to tackle as well. And then I'll go ahead and turn it over to Trustee Nicolette.
Thank you. So several times in the last few weeks, essential standards have been referenced. I mean, I think I can do some good guesses on that, but I don't want to. Is there a document, I'm sure it's not just one page, something that the trustees can look at to review the basics of when you say essential standards, we have a conceptual idea of what you're referencing?
Could I answer that, Dr. McNeil? Yes, we are working on that document, Trustee Nicolette, but I will say too that we just didn't pull off of the internet essential standards that would be important for Washoe County School District. I think the beauty of the work that has happened to identify those essential standards has been from our teachers out in our elementary, middle, and high schools, which I think, and Trustee Cottle, I don't think I answered your question about school site decisions maybe versus or in conjunction with district level decisions, because schools are very different. Schools can be a mile, it could be a mile in between two elementary schools, and they're very different schools for a variety of reasons. So we trust and we work very closely and we support our principals and our teachers in our schools. And then there's also things too, as a school district, that we need to make sure that we are supportive of and we ensure that are happening as well. And I think that kind of is the essential standards work. And I think Troy will talk, Trustee Nicolette, a little bit more about that as well. There's a lot of standards out there, and not all standards, as we say, are created equally. So what are those ones a child must have, like I said before, they progress on their academic journey. So we will have something for sure.
All right, you good? I think I'm back on and good to go, Andrew. Thank you. Diane, you're good on that? I see you clapping and whatnot. All right, fantastic. Thank you very much. Dr. McNeil, we'll pass it back on to you for whomever is next.
Absolutely. And to that point, Vice President, so go ahead and keep this slide just right where it is, JJ. don't change it back. But just, no, go ahead and go to Troy's. There you go. All right, keep it there. But to Vice President Cottle's point around mental health and emotional supports. So also don't forget that we also have a group of youngsters from kindergarten, right? Because we know that many families kept kindergartners out this year. And so as they come back into our schools as first graders, depending on where they place, that social interaction is going to be extremely important for those little ones, and the supports put into place for them as well too. So I just wanted us to keep that kind of front and center. All righty, Dr. Parks, here is your roadway. Dr. Parks? I just saw you. There he is.
I don't think we can hear you, Troy. Can you jump
You're
into
muted.
Debbie's office?
He's muted right now. His mic looks muted.
Yeah, Troy, you're muted. There you are. Okay.
We still can't hear you though.
Can't hear you. He's getting up and he's going over to the deputy's office. There are just some gremlins running around.
Yeah, he has a gremlin in his office. All right, here's Troy. Let me get mine.
Okay.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Here, you can take your mask.
Yes, sir.
So Debbie went into my office, so I can take my mask off now. I don't know what happened there, but my apologies. What I was saying is thank you, Dr. McNeil, and very glad to be here going through our plan. As Dr. McNeil kicked it off this morning, she talked about the importance of our initiatives being kind of grassroots and coming from our principals and teachers who are working directly with students and have the greatest impact. Our professional learning community focus absolutely had that origination. And it's something we've been practicing as a district. And to be sure, we've had pockets of excellence in focusing on professional learning communities. But in 2019, based on feedback from our principals, we really honed in and we formed our professional learning communities. We have teaching and learning. And I want to talk a little bit about, because you're going to be continuing to hear a lot about professional learning communities. One of our favorite acronyms, Dr. Taylor, PLCs. And the big important part here is that it seems so simple, but as you know, sometimes when things are simple, they're not easy. But the key initiative, 4 questions in PLCs. 1, what do we want students to learn? 2, how do we know when they've learned it? And then 3 and 4 kind of go to get together. And what do we do when students did learn? And what do we do when students didn't learn? So I want to talk a little bit about 2021, and you can see that where we're at. All of our Lead Teach Learns have been focused on professional learning communities. Oh, let me back up a little bit. Both Dr. Aird, she's the Director of Assessment, and Dina Chiramella, she's our Elementary Curriculum and Instruction Director. They are leading this work, not only in teaching and learning, but also at the PLC design team. So this year, we are at a point where we have established essential standards in K-9, K through 9, English language arts, and math. And to Trustee Cottle's question earlier, I would argue in the future, this is how we have to ask ourselves what type of learning loss or what kind of recovery learning are we going to be focusing on. And the essential standards process has been really another grassroots focus where both Dina and Sandy have trusted our teachers to really look at the curriculum and look at those standards and define them that are the most important standards. And then what happens is they submit those to district level, And then we are currently right now meeting again with teachers and really going over those standards and saying, you know, in third grade, do we feel like these 3 to 5 are the most important? And those are going to become what we call district level essential standards. And then to Trustee Cottle's question, schools, based on their data, they absolutely can establish some other school level essential standards, but we want to have about 3 to 5 essential grade level or course level standards that we're paying attention to. So that work is happening right now. We do have common math benchmarks right now based on essential standards in K through 5. Also, we're very close to producing what we're going to call a professional learning communities handbook. The vision here is that any teacher, any principal, any trustee, anybody who works in our district would have this handbook, so that when we talk about PLCs in the Washoe County School District, we all have a handbook that we can go to and kind of our playbook as a team, that this is what we're talking about when we talk about PLCs. Really important in a professional learning community that you define what you're going to be loose with and tight with. And the loose is, yes, we're going to give the schools autonomy. The tight side of it is pretty obvious in some cases. We're going to be tight on the essential standards and having ways to show evidence that our students not just were taught those essential standards, but that they learned them. And the key about our essential standards is, you know, we hear about MTSS tier 2, tier 3. Our essential standards, they are so important that we intervene immediately when we have evidence that students didn't learn. And if they didn't learn the second or third time or fourth time, we still intervene immediately. And this is how we work towards what we call a guaranteed and viable curriculum. One day we will be able to go to our parents and say, these are the standards your students will learn in this grade level. That's the type of commitment we want to make in professional learning communities. So I don't want to go through the whole roadmap. Again, this is the work of Dr. Aird and Dina Charamella, who are guiding this work. You can see under each year we make progress. Right now, Kendra Fox and Dr. Aird are working with our high schools and starting the process of defining essential standards in the middles and high schools. And it's going to be a journey for many, many years to truly being in a continuous improvement model and focusing in on what is most essential for our students. And then again, making sure we have evidence that they're learning, and if they aren't learning, that we are immediately intervening and supporting the learning. I think I can leave it there, and certainly academic leadership team chime in on anything I might have missed. And I see there are some hands.
I was going to say we have a couple of questions. I'll start with the first one I saw, Dr. Nicolette. Then we go to but this is a work session. So Diane, then we're going to go to Andrew, then we're going to go to Ellen. How about that?
That raised hand must have been from the last one, so I'm good. Move on, please.
All right, Andrew, you're up, my friend, and then Ellen, you're next.
Thanks, Angie. One thing that I thought about Troy as you're presenting, when you talk about eventually working with teachers to recover their learning loss. I think as a district, we have to be mindful to set realistic expectations, and it's not all going to be made up immediately. So I think as the district's creating metrics to bring to us, I do think the goal should be over the 2-year frame of this strategic plan to get recovered. I think the risk I see to our staff and our buildings is the thought that we got to get recovered now. We got to get recovered in this semester. And I think that's going to put tremendous burden on our staff. So I do think we have to be measured with the ultimate goal of within the 2 years, we are recovered and not going past that 2 years. And maybe that's going to be different for different grade levels and different areas, but it's something that I want to throw out there, because I don't want staff at all levels of our district just being overwhelmed on trying to make this up immediately when it took a year and a half to get to this point. It might take a year and a half, 2 years to get out of it.
Go ahead, Dr. Parks. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for that wisdom there, Trustee Cottle. I think we on leadership completely agree with you. And we too really want to be cognizant of the stress our teachers are under, and not in any way, shape, or form create an expectation that we're going to have some magical summer school and recover academics. And I think that's why this PLC process is so important. And I agree with you. I think that's why we approached it over a 2-year span, that we wanted to make it clear that it's not a 1 year or summer that we're going to recover our learning loss. It's going to be the rest of our students' K through 12 experience. And I would also add that the beauty of this is that when we do actually go to a full-fledged new strategic plan, the concepts of focusing on student learning and making sure you have evidence of it and addressing timely those key concepts, I'd argue are going to make our next strategic plan that much more substantial as well.
Thank you both, Troy and Andrew. Really good point. I was reading an article a couple of weeks ago, and it talked about very similar to what you're saying, Andrew, in that when kids, especially when they can finally come back in a full, with real good fidelity, full, everyone there, someone going to school every day, and not just for the primary, but especially for the primary students, of that, just connecting with them as the student and reestablishing that is going to be so important for them. And so to begin and just get right into the testing and the scoring and the where you are, it's just that can just put them in the further trauma, quite frankly, which made a lot of sense when I read this article. I mean, kids just need to reconnect and make sure that they're safe emotionally so that they can continue to open themselves up, academically along the way. I think for this, particularly for the new trustees, and I was going to say this when we first started, but I had the gremlins over here in my house. The original strategic plan was going to end in 2015. The one that in our lifetime, I guess, was going to end in 2015, and then it was extended, updated, some changes made, and so on. Not significant, but some extended to 2020. But clearly during 2020, we went through a superintendent change in 2019. Certainly it wouldn't have been wise to come up with a new strategic plan without a new CEO. And so a bridge plan was put in place. And the whole plan was during 2020 to go through and start, a real robust community-wide long-term effort, which is what a strategic plan, how it should be done with the voices from all the constituency groups that we serve and that are a part of. And for obvious reasons, that was not going to be able to happen in 2020. And so that's when Dr. McNeil came up with the bridge plan. Let's get through that school year and so on. And, so here we are. But I think there's a lot of wisdom to saying, let's not, we have to, we know it's time to do the full, robust, everybody weighs in. We haven't done that since 2014, preparing for a 2015 plan. But really these next 2 years is to really be focused in a much different way. So I really like that. I think the points that you're making, Andrew, are really, really important. Just making sure that this 2 years it's really focused on how do we recover and restore and reconnect with these kids, and then look for what we should be doing after that. So I think I like the idea of the 2 years, because it really sends a message to the students, to the staff, to the community. We're really committing for these next 2 years to really do what we can to help prop these kids back up and get them in some firm footing before even looking at what happens next. So that's it with all that. I see Ellen and then Diane. I see. Now you raised your hand electronically last time. Now you're doing this. So, you know, it's all right. Whatever you work. Jeff, I saw your hand for a minute, then it went away. So you do have it and you do know how to use it, because I just saw it. So good for you. Ellen and then Diane.
Now, just for our new trustees, they need to, and correct me if I'm wrong, we've had PLCs for several years, and there is, it's showing that it works. And there is some autonomy as to, because these 3-4 first grade teachers get together and figure out how are we going to, how do we help this child? And so there is some autonomy there in that, the steps they take. Now, am I wrong about that, Troy?
No, you're absolutely right, Trustee Minetto. What I failed to mention is the key concept in a professional learning community is that teachers in their grade levels and course levels, that they work in collaborative teams, and they really focus in on, these are all of our students. Here's our essential standards, and let's work together as a team and problem solve and make sure that all of our students learn the essential standards. And so absolutely, this really empowers teachers to be focused on what's most important. And, when you look at our curriculum, if you tried to teach everything to mastery in a grade level, you would assuredly be teaching nothing to mastery in a grade level. And so we do have to trust our teachers, and this process completely expects them to collaborate and make decisions about those essential standards. And like the question too, how do we know that they have learned it? So thank you for that.
One other sort of question. We have the kids legally till they're 22. If we have a kid that can't seem to catch up, but they want to stay in school, we can go through 22. I mean, if they're working hard and.
Yeah, so I do believe that is true for our special education, students receiving special education. I know we on a normal basis will take 5th year seniors and support them graduating. Deb or Kristen, Paul, anyone want to chime in on that one?
Yeah, I will. And then if Debbie or Paul want to, and, to that point, there's been a lot of conversations, both on the athletic point and then also, just on the academic point as far as 5th year seniors. And obviously we want to be able to intervene more rapidly than waiting until they get to their senior year. And we've put a lot of time and effort into making sure that our high school principals, and they excel at this with our counseling teams, on making sure that our students are on track and looking at those course requirements. Obviously, and Ben is going to be bringing a presentation to the board, I believe at February 23rd, talking about course failures. We know that. I mean, that's not anything that's special to or unique to Washoe. That is something that's happening across the country. But importantly, we don't want to wait until they are in their senior year. So we're going to be intervening rapidly and to make sure that they have that credit accrual and that they are on track.
Good. We're good. We go on to Diane.
Thank you. That was a great segue because I know we're looking at the future and I really enjoy this. And I think PLCs are definitely growing stronger over the years. I used to, when I was involved in CTE and signature, I used to attend PLCs, and it was wonderful how they collaborated across the schools, even across the curriculum sometime to inform each other. My question is about the PLCs and what are the current conversations within the PLCs that will support our juniors and seniors, our seniors especially, because this is a future plan. Yeah, we got to do it. It's really about the now. If you could just help me out and understand that.
Yeah, so as Dr. McNeil had mentioned, our high schools do an incredible job of monitoring credit attainment and making sure that students are being successful. And we don't ever wait until their senior year to go, oh, you're not going to graduate on time. A lot of the conversations that a professional learning community in high school would have, and this work is starting, is asking ourselves, did our students in our course, our biology is a great example. They have led the way for the professional learning communities, and they have, prior to this year, they sat down and they defined essential standards for biology. And so they have a very much guaranteed and viable curriculum. And so what they do in their professional learning communities is look at the evidence that they have that their students are acquiring those standards and meeting the standards in biology, and making sure that they are passing their classes. We were on yesterday. Kevin Carroll was giving an example of his biology and how they'd raised the freshman pass rate from 72% to 92%. Part of the conversation too that we're having right now is our grading practices. It goes hand in hand with the professional learning communities. But basically they're oriented always to the questions: what do we want our kids to learn? How do we know that they learned it? And then what do we do when they did or didn't learn? That's what we should see when we go visit professional learning communities, regardless of what it is, what level it's at. So anybody want to add anything to that?
Go ahead, Superintendent McNeil. I see you turned your mic on.
No, I was just gonna see if Joe Ernst, as an area superintendent, I know that Joe has some of our larger high schools and he's been able to get in, and we actually had a conversation the other day actually about a middle school and what he was able to observe in a professional learning community and being able to actually use them as a model, because it was just a great presentation on how a professional learning community should be able to stand up and have those conversations. So Joe, I don't know if you want to take, a minute and just let the trustees know kind of what you see as an area superintendent.
Sure. I think most specifically to Trustee Nicolette's question, really right now our counselors and high school administrators are really working carefully student by student. Ben had showed you a data link earlier in the presentation. He's also built really robust data tools for schools to look at that show that students that are on the pathway to graduation, those that may be moderately credit deficient, those that may be severely credit deficient. Counselors work with the administrators and they drill down, and again, it's a comprehensive tool. They drill down and they're able to see what courses or what things need to be made up or accomplished by the end of their senior year. So those questions are happening. area superintendents, we go and we do what we call graduation monitoring visits, and we sit down with principals and their counseling team and their admin team, and we really look at student by student those that will need those extra supports now. And then we also take it back to the sophomores and the freshmen. And I was working with a school recently, and oftentimes vanished students, students that no longer know their whereabouts, can be difficult to find. This school has already down in their freshman class less than 10 vanished students, and so those outreach efforts. So you've got the real intensive efforts happening with your juniors and seniors, but you don't ever want to lose track of those freshmen and those sophomores and making sure that they're staying on the pathway. So that's a little bit about the high school. And then just the PLC practices that you see right now in buildings are really, you can see them taking root at a high level, looking at these common formative assessments and really starting to get to item analysis type of conversation, which is really healthy amongst teachers in terms of finding where those misconceptions occurred, why those misconceptions occurred, and then what most immediately can be done to remediate the learning. So that's kind of a middle school to high school connection there.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that. I see Jeff and then Andrew.
There, am I unmuted? Couple questions. Can everybody hear me? Give me a thumbs up.
Yeah, you're good. No, you're good. You're good.
Okay, thank you. Recognizing that funding's a problem, and I just want to kind of go back what I think I heard. What I hear is under this PLC, we're going to empower principals and their staff leeway as long as they meet minimum standards to address getting through this as they see fit. I want to make sure I understand that right. And then I really liked Ellen's comment to research. I'm not an expert on education, but the students that we've lost towards that fourth year of the final year of high school, having them come back if there's funding, that fifth year that was talked about. I just like that in my brain to at least look at, because I know sometimes kids have to mature, and with everything going on with the pandemic, they may have lost track and we can get them back on track. And then my next question is, how does summer school play into that? So those are my basic questions, make sure I heard right. And then I like the idea of the fifth year being looked at, and how does summer school play into it?
Kristen, I know you, I have some things in my head on response that you can go deeper than I am, so I can. So I know you're ready to respond.
Yeah, so for the minimum standards, Trustee Church, you never want to, and it was interesting, when we opened our schools back up this year, one of the things that we were very certain about is that our teachers, they were all ready to rock and roll. I wanted to get in and I wanted to assess, and it was actually us that said, just take care of yourself and take care of your students. Take care of yourself and take care of your students. And that was really the mantra that we wanted to open our schools. And that's the mantra that we're going to be carrying through these next 2 years. Obviously, we always want to have high standards. We have high standards for ourselves and we have high standards for our students. So it's not lowering the standards, but it's building those supports so that all students are able to reach those standards. As far as the fifth year, and Debbie, jump in if you want to. As far as fifth year seniors, it's something that is always available, and we've worked with our schools over the last couple of years to make sure that is an available option. But obviously, it is not the optimum option. We want our students to be able to graduate in 4 years, and that's what our principals and our teachers, they work very, very hard in order to do that. But in the instance where we do have a fifth year senior, we've worked very hard to make sure that our schools have that support in place to make sure that student is able to graduate. And they can graduate. We actually have had, and many of our trustees have attended our summer graduation in August. And then we actually have sometimes a little graduation ceremony in October for those students that may need just a little bit of extra time. And then I'm going to turn it over to Debbie for your summer school question.
So, and thank you, Dr. McNeil. So nothing to add about the fifth year status, Trustee Church, other than for you to know that just recently, Gina Curtis, one of our area superintendents, met with our high school principals to walk through that process again for our fifth year students, our potential fifth year students. So, so summer school, traditionally, I will say that summer school, it's different than maybe what we remember as summer school, those of us that maybe took summer school. It has tended in the past to be more around interventions and extension of learning. And then specifically at the high school level, it's more focused on credit recovery. So maybe a student who needs to pass a semester of English or their health requirement for graduation. But going into this summer, it's likely going to need to look very different on students that we would invite, or identify and invite and work with families to bring into our schools. I very much see continued opportunities for credit recovery for our high school students. So whether they're looking to graduate this summer, as Dr. McNeil said, or juniors transitioning to their senior year that need to get a few more credits under their belt as a result of this school year. And then at the elementary and middle school level, very much see opportunities diving deeper into English language arts and mathematics, for example. And then I think all of us are in agreement that the transition from 8th grade to high school is a big, big transition in the best of times. And what might that look like this year, and how summer school can help those students as well. So again, I will work closely with our schools and teachers that are interested in working for summer school, and then putting plans in place with hopefully funding to help with those plans to get kids ready for August.
Just for the record, these are just questions, but I wasn't suggesting we lower standards. I was just trying to understand what I think I heard, that we're empowering principals and staff rather than having one size fits all. I think that's what I heard, and that's all I was trying to confirm.
Good, Kristen?
And just super quickly, and then I think we have Trustee Caudle. ESY is going to be a term that you all will hear, and ESY is a program that is available to our students on individualized education plans. It stands for Extended School Year, and it's an opportunity for our students on IEPs to be able to attend school. And so those efforts are underway, and it has to be written into a student's individualized education plan. So just, you may hear that term come up as you're doing your school visits as far as ESY.
Thank you, Kristen. I think that took care of your questions, right, Jeff? All right, sounds good. Andrew, you're up.
Thanks, Angie. Troy, you had talked about data, and I personally have always appreciated the district's willingness to be open and honest about the data. And I think it's important as we go forward to gather as much data as possible, think outside the box to try to find the root of issues that we could potentially have, and that'll help us solve the problems that we're seeing. So I think that would, for me personally, that would be my challenge, is to really think outside the box to find the issues that are out there. And I know that in previous work sessions on the strategic plan, I brought up the graduation, and that, as a district, I think over the last few years, we've done a good job of really understanding that the goal of high school graduation starts in elementary school. And then if we're waiting until high school to think about high school graduation, that's when we lose students, because there could be issues in elementary school and middle school that are showing there's an issue. And so I would also challenge the district to continue to look at ways to engage elementary school and middle school staff to uncover data points that can project students maybe not as likely to graduate based on things that are seen in the early years, and then engaging those staff into that work. Because I think sometimes the community separates it to where elementary school and middle school is, it's nice, it's good, everything's great. When they get to high school, it's like, oh my gosh, the high school has got to fix all these issues. And that's not fair, because in many cases it's at that point in a really, really tough spot. And so I like how we have the vertical set up with the area soups. It could be great opportunities there to engage everyone in that conversation as we go forward. And I do think it starts with key data points. So those are just the last comments I would say on this topic, kind of put a bow on it.
Trustee Cottle, this is Deborah. If I could just quickly share a few thoughts, and then maybe Ben might want to jump in here. And I don't know if Troy's mic is working again, but thank you for pointing out the vertical work. Sorry, Troy. And so the vertical work has been in place in our school district for a number of years. And basically, I think, as all the trustees know, our schools are grouped together by area, and how schools in elementary school, those students move into the middle school and then to the high school. But another powerful part of the vertical work is the engagement of the principals with each other. So whether it's around maybe specific needs of a family who has children in each of those schools, or academic challenges, social emotional challenges with a student that might be leaving an elementary school going to middle or middle to high, those principals work very closely together. Our area superintendents meet regularly with their verticals. And while academics and PLC work absolutely drives that, there's a lot more to that vertical work as well. And then Ben, I was thinking about the risk index, and which is another one of the amazing tools from our accountability office. Troy talked about it earlier, but I don't know, Ben, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm putting you on the spot. If you could talk a little bit about that data that's available to our schools and our teachers especially.
Yeah, of course. I think the pathway for the last decade has been a really good kind of organizing principle for us, and it gets to what you're talking about, Vice President Cottle. So we built an early warning system, and there's several other districts around the country that have done it, but it kind of shows that kids, for lack of a better term, the risk of them falling off that pathway, whether they're in 3rd grade or 11th grade, falling off that pathway to graduation. And really the point is to get them supports and wraparound services depending on the severity of the risk. So we've built it basically from kindergarten is when we start collecting data. Really, the early warning system goes through 1st through 12th grade, and it kind of incorporates things like attendance, incorporates suspension, course failures, core course failures, and different things like that. And it's been a really predictable, sadly predictable tool. But what I would say for our schools is the prediction of the early warning system hasn't been as accurate, I guess, as it could have been the last several years. So what I mean by that is, if we built the risk index, basically, if this happens, the chances of this child dropping out or not graduating are really high, but they've broken that prediction with interventions, with support and wrapping around. So it's really been a good tool. We're revamping it. We're kind of the theme of today, revamping it for the next 2 years, or at least doing a supplemental early warning system for kind of the deep spots where kids have been pretty disengaged or failed several courses. So we're working on a tool for that for schools. And then as we go forward, and Dr. McNeil will talk a little bit more about it later in the presentation, as we go forward to a portrait or a promise of a graduate, we'll build more of a strengths base on track indicator. So it won't necessarily be a kind of risk thing or an early warning thing. It'll be, how is this child collecting the competencies to round out that portrait of a graduate? And that will definitely start in pre-K and kindergarten. So thanks.
All right, let's keep moving. Can
everybody hear me now? I just want to test to make sure you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
I have a 30-second final word, because it's such an important point. And that what you said, Trustee Cottle, is completely true, and Ben alluded to it. But what we'll be able to articulate very soon is exactly what the pathway is from kindergarten to graduation, and be able to look at the essential standards along that pathway and ask ourselves, are we going to be graduating students that have those skill sets that we know they need? You know, the ability to collaborate at high levels, the abilities to communicate at high levels. We'll be able to articulate that along the pathway, and those focus on student learning is what I'm excited about being able to bring in the future. I think that's where we're headed.
Thanks so much, Troy. Kristen, back to you.
All righty, so we're gonna move on. JJ, if you would advance the slides. So we are now at goal 2, which is really around our human capital and highly effective personnel. And so I am going to have Miss Emily Ellison come onto the screen.
Good morning, I'm here.
There you are. Lights are working and everything.
And you can still hear me.
Still hear you.
Great news. The gremlins are up in the A building. All right, well, good morning. Emily Ellison, Chief Human Resources Officer for the record. And as Dr. McNeil shared, goal 2 is all about our people. And it was really challenging to figure out which 2 to 3 areas to focus on for this time, because we know that people are the heart of our organization and really critical to delivery of our mission. And so what you'll see reflected here are really mine and my team's thoughts about where we can make the biggest impact over the next 2 years as we contemplate response and recovery. And the first bullet is focused on our guest teacher program. And we know that this was a challenge even prior to the pandemic, but the pandemic has certainly exacerbated the challenge and really shone a very, very bright spotlight on the really critical role that our guest teachers play. And so I think over the next 2 years, our work as a group is to contemplate how we should think about our guest teacher program and explore ways to restructure our guest teacher program that really focuses on increasing engagement and fill rates. I think that could look like a lot of different things. It could look like evaluating compensation structure, professional learning, incentives, targeted recruitment, career pathways, really understanding who our guest teachers are, what drives their behavior in terms of picking up assignments, and then figuring out a way to really leverage that information and capitalize on it so that our schools have the supports that they need and our students' learning continues when the contracted teacher isn't in the classroom. Dr. McNeil, did you want me to stop after each bullet to ask for questions, or kind of review in total and then do questions?
I think in total would probably be best, so we can keep the flow going, Kristen, unless you think differently.
That's exactly what I said, but
Okay.
I was muted, but yes, yeah.
Excellent. So then the next bullet really focuses on recovery and what our employees have experienced during this time. And what I think we've really come away having a better understanding of, or at least a greater awareness of, is the fact that, you know, we talk a lot about making sure that we support the whole child. It's also really important that we think about the whole employee. And this experience has really given us a lens into the fact that our employees are not just educators. They're mothers and fathers and grandparents and sons and brothers and caretakers, and you know, they're responsible for the legal affairs of others, and they have children with special needs, and our employees have really complex situations that they're dealing with. And so how we support them and what that looks like over the next couple of years, I think is something that we should really invest in, because, you know, if people reach a breaking point, you can't necessarily change your family dynamics, but you can make decisions about your profession, and retention is going to be critically important. And so supporting the staff mental health and the well-being of our employees, I think, is going to become mission critical for us as an organization. And so whether that's the expansion of existing programs or the implementation of new programs, again, I think we really need to shift our focus and emphasize supporting the whole employee as a part of this comprehensive recovery effort. And then finally, in order to build succession plans for leadership positions, which was important even before the pandemic, because we know we have a bit of a recruitment bubble that we're sort of living through and will be living through over the next several years, we need to focus on succession planning, making sure that from a recruiting perspective, we're building bench strength, and from a development perspective, that we're really providing developmental opportunities and experiences so that when people do get into leadership positions, the learning curve is lessened and they can really be effective earlier in their career and in those roles. And so, from a human capital perspective, I think there's a lot of things that we could list here in terms of, things that are important to focus on. But I do think that these 3 areas really kind of encapsulate what would be most important over the next 2 years. And I'll pause for questions.
Okay, I was just going to say, any questions? I mean, certainly I think what you say makes sense, and making sure that we particularly remember that our teachers are also parents in this community going through the same thing all the other parents are going through, and our desire to support them as well. So let's go to a couple of questions. I see Andrew and then Kurt and then Jeff. We'll go in that order. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Angie, and thanks, Emily. The presentation's in a great order, because what I was thinking through goal 2 is we're going to have a hard time getting through goal 1 without goal 2. And I think as a district, one thing that we should really look at is when you all come to us with proposals for the metrics for goal 1, I think we have to think about how do we make sure our personnel are highly effective in doing so. And that's looking at everything that's on their plate and deciding what things are important to us to accomplish what we want to accomplish, and what things maybe we can push off their plate so they can be more focused in on goal 1. And I do think our bill proposal for SLOs is a great start in this next legislative session. So I know there's a lot of work that has to happen yet with this, but I would say goal 2 and goal 1 should be paired together. That we can't do goal 1 if our staff are overwhelmed, overburdened. It just can't happen. I know some things are outside of our control, but if we can control it, we should really make a targeted effort to try to make sure their days and their responsibilities are focused in on what we are looking for in goal 1. And I think that starts with us as a board, and then it comes down, superintendent and the team. And I think we're all in agreement on that. I think the hard part is how do we get there, because there's so many things where we have to do that we can't control, like what the state tells us. And so I think this session is really important with unfunded mandates. Get rid of them. Let us do our work. And I'm hoping that we can use something like this to tie with their legislators when they say, so what's your plan? Well, here's our plan. Here's our plan right here. Here are our goals for 2 years, so they can see that work. So Emily, I appreciate presentation. I think it ties in great to what we've talked about so far.
Thank you. And I think you make a really important point. That second bullet around mental health and well-being is not just programs, right? That's not just employee assistance programs. That's making sure that our systems and our policies are really aligned to the employee experience that we want to offer. And so you're right, these 2 things are very, very tangled up, and we need to be thinking through both lenses as we proceed.
Great, thanks. We'll keep it going. Kurt?
Yeah, thank you, Emily and staff for putting this together. I agree wholeheartedly with Vice President Cottle. I think that our staff and our teachers are going to hopefully feel very reassured that we are prioritizing their well-being over the next 2 years. I know from hearing from many teachers throughout the pandemic that they're feeling just completely burned out. And of course, they're dealing with teaching their own kids at home and teaching everyone else's kids at the same time through distance learning or the hybrid model. So definitely think mental health is top of that list. And I think whatever we can do to get creative in terms of teacher retention so that we're keeping people within this industry long-term, and that our teachers are feeling appreciated and valued, and
yeah, I think we can get creative there somehow. And like Vice President Cottle said, I think that our teachers are going to want to hear how we're going to do some of these things here pretty soon, especially as we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, hopefully, of COVID. So yeah, I'm very appreciative that we're putting this as like one of our top priorities, and I agree. I think this should be in combination with goal number 1. So thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments.
Hey, Jeff, you're up.
Thank you. Number 1, I think I understand guest teachers, essentially what we used to call substitute teachers. So stop me if I'm wrong on that. And
that's correct.
Thank you. There's an expression, you take care of your people and they'll take care of the mission. So I think that's so important to take care of the mission. And I think we know, most of you know, that recruiting is one of my top priorities. I taught recruiting nationwide. Putting me aside, I know 1 or 2 excellent instructors. I know a PhD out of California who could probably come up almost for free and help us get on that right path. And some of the solutions are really, really easy and really, really well used by some other industries. So those are things we can talk about. But recruitment's big on for me, and I think it's something we need to focus on too. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm sorry, Emily, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say thank you for that feedback, Trustee Church.
Okay. All right, great. Kurt and Jeff, if you guys can put your hands down, unless you have another question, that would be helpful. Thank you. Other thing I guess I would say, I just think it's important that the educators, the teachers, all educators, in fact, but teachers particularly, know that this is on our radar. So I'm glad this is brought to the forefront. They know that this is something, hey, we are mindful that this has been one heck of a ride for you in a way that some people haven't experienced at all. So anything that we can do, I think, to help support them, to help retain them and continuing your work. And I know you work on this already, Emily, and other places on the staff, but continuing our work for what are those things that make things difficult for them in the classroom, right, as well. That's probably longer term. That's not the 2-year, and I know we're focusing on the 2-year, but whether it's, whether they need to get help or understand better on how to deal with, some of the disciplinary issues. Some of them go through some pretty tough stuff. How do we help them with that, right? I don't know what that means, what that is, but I get some of that feedback. And I think the work that Tiffany's office does is tremendously important. And how do we just help people deal with people that they aren't necessarily used to dealing with? And that's all of us. All of us have people that we aren't necessarily used to dealing with just because we're human, right? Doesn't mean we're anything other than human. But man, that can be stressful, especially and when things are, so polarized and highly sensitive in our communities, whether it's race or gender, identity, whatever, any of that stuff, whatever it may be, right? And we have to remember they go through that too. They have race, they have identities, they have, they have orientations and so on. So just, that's probably longer term than the 2 years. But I think the more that they see that their well-being is on our radar, it sends a message that, you know what, hey, we hear you, we care about you. And, I'll use a military phrase just because Jeff did, right? Mission first, people always. People always. Take care of your people and they'll take care of the people.
I think your point is really important, and that is not everyone experiences the same stressors, right? For me, my email is my greatest source of stress because I know when I can't reply to people, they're waiting on something important from me. For other people, it could be the things that you're talking about, like dealing with this source of, in the workplace, dealing with biases and challenges around that and everything in between. And so this effort to address, what it is that is making people feel stressed out or what their stressors are is going to have to be a multidisciplinary approach across departments. And it's going to have to be tools and resources and benefits and information and, again, supporting the whole employee, because it's going to look so different for every person based on their particular experiences. So we have to have a multifaceted approach.
Well, I appreciate this being on your radar, Emily, and you pulling that in as a part of yours, Kristen, because people people, it's one thing to say that we care about people. People need to see that we care about them. And I think this document is the thing that says these are the things that we think are important. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And, when Emily was bringing these forward, to myself to take a look at them, she hit the nail right on the head as far as the areas of focus. And it's not that, 2 years from now, we're not going to say, well, that's great. And now we're going to be moving on to something else. I really want to instill a district ethos that we talk about culture and that we talk about kindness and that we talk about respect for one another. And our teachers have just, they've really just done a tremendous job this year, whether they're in distance learning or in hybrid or in person. But I also want for us to always be aware, we have some of the most amazing principals that are running our schools and have had to just deal with tremendous aspects. They've got so many things coming towards them on a daily basis. And then obviously our support departments, our bus drivers, our nutrition service workers, our aides, our assistants in our schools, central services, payroll, human resources, IT. All of these departments go towards what happens in goal 1 tied to goal 2. So I just want to, and I know that all the trustees understand that too, but we've got 8,000 people that come to work every single day for the best of what we do for our students and families. So, and that goes into a real nice segue into goal 3, unless any other trustee had any questions, more questions or comments around goal 2.
Let's segue to family and community.
All righty. Okay, and so for goal 3, we've got Dr. Lamarca and Megan Downs, and then also Vanjie Russell.
Hi again, this is Paul. I think I'm beginning with this first bullet, and I actually want to kind of go backwards with it. There's a key word in the last sentence, and it's the word with students and families. We hear often how we do things to people as opposed to with people. So this is really what this bullet is about, is how do we meaningfully engage with our families so together we can create the best opportunities for their children within our learning environments. And that requires us to build the capacity among students, families, and staff to develop that voice so that they can engage in this meaningful dialogue, understand the ins and outs of the school district so they can do that. It also requires the same capacity building among our staff in culturally responsive practices, equitable practices, valuing all cultures, leads into embracing the voices of our students and our families as equal partners sort of in this enterprise. So I've kind of sort of jumped around with that bullet, but for me, that's what this bullet means in principle. I think actually Vanjie may be taking the second bullet.
Thank you, Paul. I'm writing. Thanks. So we've heard today, and we know that the pandemic has created a lot of uncertainties for our students, our family, and our staff. Our commitment as board services in collaboration with the Office of Communications and Community Engagement is that we will continue to welcome opportunities for our internal and external stakeholders to engage with our trustees with suggestions and questions virtually as we support the town halls, in writing via our website email address for board members, or individual trustees, their emails are listed on the website. And then through public comment, they can, communicate with us. And we want to support them and show them that we are listening and that we are responding to their questions and concerns. And that is how we plan to create that authentic two-way communication and to foster those authentic relationships. Before I turn this over to Ms. Megan, I just want to close with that the response to recovery plan is part of the trust building project, because we will be seeking input and from our groups on what their needs and thoughts are as we move into this. So Ms. Megan.
Great, thank you, Vanjie. I appreciate that. So part of the second bullet, of course, obviously is also the responsibility of communications. And in that, you know, we're working to strengthen and rebuild trust in the board, in the district, in the work that we do. We know that misunderstandings exist among communities and constituents, and it's continuous work to improve that relationship and talk about the truths that the district is facing. You know, we know that a lot of that work needs to be done among minority communities, for example, and a lot of that trust building that we continue to work on and our strategies for improving relationships. Vanjie, of course, mentioned the board piece of this. You know, we're working virtually, as you know, with constituent emails, virtual forums, et cetera, but it doesn't stop there. This work will continue with, you know, trustee school visits, as you all are experiencing now, creating opportunities with forums, town halls, one-on-ones, Rotary Club visits, the list goes on. So within that, you know, we're working fully and proactively to explain board policies and district initiatives to receive that genuine and internal and external feedback. Additionally, fostering relationships with media partners, which is also a large goal of ours, and continually approaching this in a proactive manner so that the district's top initiatives are fully understood by the community. And we're also doing our own internal communications that we push out. We do our own storytelling. We don't just rely on the media. Great example of this was last night in the State of Education address. And more work like that will continue, using our tools to tell the stories, the successes, and the challenges of the district. For that third bullet there, increasing confidence in and sustaining support for schools as the preferred choice among families. It's been a year of uncertainty in the lives of our families and staff. So as this recovery plan is about reassurance, letting families know that we have a plan in place for their students, and building employee confidence in our pathway, building that trust and providing structure in our roadmap. We're working on communications and marketing efforts to retain and recruit students, and that will just continue to be a top priority, I think, from everyone's office, enhancing that customer service at schools to ensure that schools are a welcoming place for students, and directly addressing those enrollment issues to work on regaining students that we have lost this year, welcoming them back into our system. So that'll be the work. And, you know, of course, also as a side note, simply communicating this plan now, our response to recovery, so that we can effectively create and share these goals with the community. And that's why even in this presentation, you'll see several draft concepts of that response to recovery path logo that we've sort of been working on. We put a lot of options in this presentation, but just showing that we're working on it, we're thinking about it, and how that's going to be presented to the community already. So with that, we'll take any questions on goal 3.
I see Kurt, your hand's up. We'll go there and then we'll hit Andrew.
Yes, thank you, Angie. And Megan, I just want to, again, give you and your team praise. I mean, last night's State of the Education was amazing. I put on a couple virtual events myself, and I can tell you how much a headache it is, and for all the work that you guys put into it, it was just great. Just a couple things on the kind of trustee side of things. I wonder if, I think it's important that the community see us out and about doing things. And I know not all of my colleagues are super active on social media, which is fine. But I wonder, Megan, if it would be, because I know we have, like, for example, a trustee Twitter account that's not like incredibly active. Would it be beneficial for us as trustees to share with the communications team, like, hey, this is what I'm doing this week, if we want to put it out there, so that we have that engagement with the community, not just face to face, but out there online, to where people can see, like, hey, we are actually out there meeting with constituents, doing the school visits, those kinds of things. Would that be beneficial at all?
Yeah, absolutely. We love that. And, please work with Colleen to share those things. I know a lot of times, as you mentioned, Kurt, it's easier maybe for you to share that because you have your own channels, but we can, of course, create those, or you can tag us and we'll share yours, of course. But going forward, I would hope that we'll see that a lot more. I think part of the challenge with social media this year has just been people aren't physically going to a lot of places. And that's been part of the balance that we've had with communications, is how often do we talk about where we physically are and what that looks like. But I think, we'll see that opening up a lot more and be able to share those stories more often.
Something I'll add, if I may, just because it's on the same topic, is one of the things that we've talked about in the past, Kurt, is us, and I don't always do this in either of my the accounts I work the most, social media accounts, is if we tag the trustee page or the district, then they do a real good job. They'll pick it up, they'll post it, right? And then that helps, and them maybe it's not me saying, hey, I'm going here, would you want to post it? When I'm putting it on my page, just well, hey, I'm going here, looking forward to it, I tag. And then it makes it easier for Charles or Colleen, whoever is assigned to it, to just pick it up and post it. And we can help, for those of us that are a little bit more active on social, right? We can help just share. And I completely just stopped doing that for some unknown reason. And so now they have to kind of find it if they see it. But I can certainly make it a lot easier if I just share, if I just tag on any of them, and they can put, so that's a really good idea. And especially because, as we're looking to, to kind of streamline, I shouldn't even say streamline, but to just keep our arms around our agendas a little bit more. We don't have those, we've taken those parts out for trustees for us to talk about what we've done or where we've gone. So if we utilize existing channels, it still gets it out there. And quite frankly, there'll be a whole lot more people picking it up on Twitter or Facebook or even on Insta than they'll be watching a trustee meeting at 11:15 p.m.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a great point, and I'll certainly do a better job of tagging the district in these things too. So thanks for that.
If you would, Megan, just as a reminder, just send out to us what's the addresses on I know we use Facebook, Twitter the most. I don't even know if we have Instagram, but if we can just do Facebook and Twitter. I mean, I'm not saying we don't need to create anything new. We ain't even using what we have, right? But then we can, at least for those of us that have any kind of presence at all,
Yes.
we can begin to utilize that. That'd be helpful.
We'll absolutely get those to you. Yep.
Thank you. Yeah, Andrew, you're next.
Thank you, Angie. And thank you, team, for this presentation. Personally, I really miss the engagement in the community, athletic events, concerts, things that we all would definitely go to. I think one thing that we can take a look at going forward is, before the pandemic, we would have the trustee town halls. I think there are ways that we can enhance those, but get back to them and give people the opportunity to come see us, see Kristen, to speak about things within our zones. Before the pandemic, I remember when Kristen held her town halls with staff, and the trust has started to be built. And I think part of why those were so successful is that they were honest, truthful, and authentic. I think we just need to keep working on that. We're always going to have people that, no matter what we say, their pastime is to go after the school district, and there's nothing we can do about that. But I think we just have to keep working on being honest, truthful, and authentic with our community, because that's how you build that trust. And during the pandemic, I think what we've seen, at least what I've heard from schools, they've seen really successful attendance at some of the things they're doing with their families, because it's been on Zoom. And it's just easier for families to attend some of those things if it's on Zoom. So I do think there are ways we can get creative to think about how we still integrate those platforms going forward, but also still try to get back to engaging with people in person, because I'd also think that that is important as well. So I do think there's opportunities going forward to engage our community. I do think we're still better off than we have been in a long time. I think we just have to keep building on that, and then we got a COVID just take off with it.
Great, thank you.
It sounds good. We have and we have seen, you know, the town halls that we've had, even towards the beginning of COVID. I know I had one, Andrew, you had one right before we hired the superintendent, you know, reaching, I think you went, oh, it was a switch. You went public in person, and then there was a shift, and then a month or two later, I did mine online or whatever, and we thought we wouldn't have enough people to ask questions. We thought, hey, you know, if we end early, and 30 minutes, it's okay. We kind of had ourselves ready for that. And as it turned out, we had to go, well, okay, this will be our last question. If you have more, you can send them in. So I think you're right, Andrew. When people, and research has shown, because people are home more, they engage more if it's a topic of interest to them. So maybe we can go with a virtual town hall type format or something as a trustee, something we can, we'd be speaking with Colleen about, anything like that. And okay, we're gonna take a break. We're gonna take. I wasn't on. Superintendent said we're gonna take a 30-minute break, and nope, it's gonna be 20. But we're at home, so we should take us less time to get something. It's a work session, so if you're still eating your sandwich or whatever online, it's gonna be okay. You can even hide your camera. No, DoorDash is not coming to your house to get your lunch. That's not happening. It's not happening. So go get whatever you're gonna get. But before we break, I would be remiss if I didn't say two things. One, just thank you so very much, and I think Kurt alluded to this, Andrew as well. Just thank you so very much for the work that was done on the state of ed last night. I thought it was great. I like being able to start and watch it a little bit early. Megan, thank you for the link, for the secret link. But because I had time then, I had another meeting at 7. But no, I thought especially for a first time effort. I loved that Victoria got a chance to be involved, talking to some students. I think that was great. Of course, Billinghurst, I'll brag a little bit, one of my schools, I'm just saying. I mean, I think it was just tremendous, really great work. That stuff has to take a lot to put together. Look, we're just trying to do virtual church every Sunday, and it drives me crazy most of the time. So to put together what you put together last night, just a really great job. And I want to tip my hat off to my colleague, Vice President Carlo, his first real state of education appearance. You did a great job, very natural, very flowing. It was fantastic. It was just really good. So thank you to everybody that did that. Megan, you and the team, please let them know. Andrew, you're probably gonna go viral, so get ready. But just really appreciate it. Really appreciate it.
I needed 2 takes.
You need 2 takes. Hey, me too. 2 takes, man. Look, I'm just saying, I saw Kristen do like 5. So we're way ahead of her. I'm just saying, she did like 5 on that opening. Me and Mom were there. I'm just, don't make me call Mom for a witness. She was there. I got receipts, man. I got receipts. All right, everybody, let's take 20 minutes. We'll come back at, if my computer clock says 11:06, so we'll make it 11:26. Again, don't be waiting for DoorDash or you will be late. But do whatever you have to do, and we'll start at 11:26. Thank you, everybody. Okay, why don't we go ahead and get started with goal 4.
All righty, and we have 2 presenters for goal 4. So we're going to start off with Mr. Mathers, and JJ's getting us back up on the screen. And there we are. Perfect. Thank you, JJ. All righty, Mark.
Great. Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay, good. I was having some problems before. So we've outlined kind of 3 very related strategies, goals for the finance area. The first of them, as we talked about on Tuesday, is to provide for academic recovery and mental health supports and SEL programming through the federal stimulus funding in our budget. And that would be not just fiscal year 22, but likely fiscal year 23 and maybe beyond. So kind of a basic notation here, but just to kind of put it in writing that we feel like these are important priorities for the district and that we will work towards programming those costs and that new programming in the budget. So secondly, related to that, in order to be able to do that, we need to maintain a structurally balanced general fund budget so that the bulk, at least, of federal stimulus dollars can go towards that additional new programming. And again, we talked a lot about on Tuesday about not kicking the can down the road, making the decisions to reset our budget at where we think a stabilized, sustainable point of funding from the state and local revenues will be. We did provide for an exception here, where there are areas perhaps of programmatic reductions that we could use some stimulus money to kind of pace those reductions down over the next biennium. So we wanted to make it clear that, ultimately the board certainly could choose to kind of ride down those programs over time versus making drastic cuts in the span of just a year. And as I think Kristen talked about earlier in the meeting, we think it's prudent to start working on at least a 2-year plan. And we actually kind of thought a 4-year financial plan over the next 2 bienniums, if there is phasing of the pupil-centered funding plan, makes sense, so that we can map out, hopefully, based on information from the state that we receive. And again, we're dependent on state information to do this, but if we can get that information, we can map out what our general fund resources will look like over the next 2 bienniums or 4 years, and show how programming will change between, what the state has to do in the next 2 years, hopefully a rise in funding over the years 3 and 4, layered over the financial stimulus funding we'll receive. So it's a complicated picture for sure. It'll be a lot of effort. It'll be a plan and a model, not obviously set fixed appropriations, but we think it's important for us to try to do that, show it to you and, Dr. McNeil and the rest of the leadership team and kind of plot out where we're headed. So those are really quickly kind of what we've proposed, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Do we have any questions first of all, from my colleagues? Any questions for Mark? I know we just had a budget workshop and a work session, I should say, and Mark walked us through, so we're all up to speed on the impact of the stimulus funding that we know that is coming, and that may be that's anticipated based upon whatever other package comes out of the federal government. Andrew.
Thanks, Angie. Thank you, Mark. I know we went over a lot of this, so absolutely in agreement with bullet 2. Bullet 3 for your 4-year financial plan. So the goal of the 4-year plan would be to transition the district smoothly into the new funding plan, to kind of and then look ahead a little bit to make sure we are aware of any long-term issues, and then also to make sure that long-term our federal dollars are going to be able to be earmarked for academic recovery and not have to be used in a future year to plug a hole.
That's exactly right. I have noticed a lot of chatter about the President Biden's new stimulus plan being it will start to be considered in Congress next week is what I'm saying, just as an aside. But yeah, you're exactly right. We'd like to be able to try to project where we might be, not just next biennium, but the following biennium. A lot of assumptions will go into that, of course, but I think it's better to kind of map that out now and see what problems might lie ahead than, kind of go year to year to year.
No, that's great. I think that has really helped our district be more financially sound, is that through you and your team giving us more of a long-term outlook too, so we understand the decisions that we're making and the impact it has long term. And then it sounds like if we can, as a board and as a district, have a structurally balanced general fund, and then have a plan to use the stimulus dollars for academic recovery, then any extra money that comes in the next weeks or months is in addition to everything, because we've essentially got our house in order, not hoping that that stimulus money comes down the road, and then it will just help us even further with the recovery. So no, I appreciate that. I think this is great, and puts us on it's a great strategy to make us fiscally sound. And when the community asks, so what are you guys actually going to do for academic recovery, we can not just show the programs, we can show the funding behind the programs as well. So I think that will be excellent. So thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. I see you, Diane.
Yes, I concur. Thank you, Andrew. I guess my question is, we have to be flexible and resilient, of course. In our effort budgeting planning, at what point do we have to, or I guess I know it's law, do we have to resubmit a budget when it has drastically changed one way or another?
We do. State law provides for augmentations and for school districts, an adjustment, mid-year adjustment when our funding does change dramatically. We don't have to technically go to the state if we were to defund anything or reduce appropriations, but certainly any increased appropriations mid-year, we do have to go to the state. And of course, you know, there's an annual budget process with lots of timelines as well. So yeah, our budgets are submitted to the state, the Department of Taxation, and they do review those budgets, and they will provide a letter indicating, you know, your budget's sound, we concur, no problems, kind of clean bill of health. So that process will continue.
Thank you, Diane. Kurt?
Yes, thank you, Mark, for this presentation. I did have a quick question. Since our budget meeting and our regular board meeting, where we talked extensively about our budgets and possible changes to programs, have you heard anything new from the state? I know that you and your team have been trying to make some headway there, and I'm just curious if you've gotten any new information or anything like that.
Yes, Trustee Thigpen, we actually have. We got revised numbers from the state yesterday, I believe it was. Might have been Wednesday. Still a lot of questions about them. But the state did provide breakdowns for weighted funding and our adjusted base funding. Unfortunately, we identified that those allocations were based on 2019 enrollment numbers, not 2020 enrollment numbers. So we kind of pinged the Department of Ed back to ask for numbers that are based on true current enrollment numbers. So there's still a lot of give and take, and there will be a lot of give and take at the Commission on School Funding meeting next Thursday and Friday, where I think the 4 CFOs that sit on the commission will be grilling the Department of Ed about the assumptions that went into these numbers and so forth. But yeah, we are getting more information, just that begs more questions.
Thank you, Kurt. Andrew?
Thanks, Angie. And then Mark, to follow up on that, it might be worth restarting the conversations about maybe resetting funding to 2019 enrollment levels to give districts the funding as we recover back to that enrollment number. I know our district approached legislators about that in June. It was not accepted. So that might be something to think about. The question I have for you, and maybe even for Kristen as well, the 4-year financial plan, that might be something that the board may want to consider adopting in a board policy, that we will always look at a 4-year financial plan that may help us make decisions. It's not always going to be accurate because we know that we don't control that, but it helps us with outlook. I know since I've been on the board, Mark, you've been really good about giving us outlook, but it may be something for a future discussion for us to consider
putting that in policy along with the other fiscal policies we have to review a 4-year financial plan as a part of our budgeting process. I'm just curious on your thoughts on that.
I concur. We'll actually be bringing you our 3 major budget fiscal policies to the Board Policy Committee in March. So we absolutely can talk about that, not next month, but shortly, a month and a half.
Perfect. And then you can let us know if you think it's worth it, too much work for not a lot of reward, but there could be some value in it not being just recovery. It's actually a thing that we do long term.
Well, I appreciate those comments, and I concur, and I appreciate you kind of making that cost benefit statement, because yes, a lot of times I've seen agencies do long-term financial plans and they're not really used. They're not, it's tough to do them for sure, but I think in this case it makes sense. But yeah, appreciate those comments.
Yeah, and I'll just say, I mean, this is something that we talked about as a leadership team walking into this recovery plan, that we really do need to take a look, and it really is for the benefit of the district, to have a longer term, fiscal plan. And it doesn't mean, obviously, in times of crisis or times of recession, that you're not going to have to deviate from that plan. But I just think it speaks to the organizational health and well-being overall, that you have a longer term plan. And obviously with our 2-year biennium, we know that things change within that. But I just think it's for the best for the district. So I agree.
Thank you very much. Again, we're going to be getting monthly updates on the budget for the planning for this upcoming really fiscal year / biennium. But the long-term outlook, I think, is something that's really intriguing to take a look at. And should we be able to get our arms around that, really seems like it put us on much better financial footing, even though we know there are always going to be changes as far as being a part of a system that gets funding from the state. But it is sure kind of, and it almost take a little bit of an, not because we like where we are, but at least we know where we are, right? And it's so going into a legislative session and having to put a budget together, knowing that the budget is, in some cases, means absolutely nothing, just depending, right? And having to go back and do all the work. I know would take a lot of stress off of Mark and his team, who, by the way, do an amazing job. So as we all know. Anything else on goal 4?
All righty.
That's really good. Thank you, Mark.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you.
And we are now going to move over into the second half of goal 4, and that is our COO, Mr. Etchart. And so he's going to be walking through, he was an overachiever as usual. And so he has 4 strategies going into our 2-year plan. So
he has 2 areas. We'll give him a pass. He's got 2, nutrition and transportation. So we'll give him a pass.
That's exactly right. So Pete Etchart, Chief Operating Officer, and I did break the rules by having 4 strategies, but I felt it was kind of important to do so because there's really 4 main departments and operations, and I wanted each of them to kind of have a chance to talk about what their recovery focus is going to be going forward. So that's why I have 4. So I'll start off with facilities management. So it's the successful completion of current and planned major capital projects, facility critical repair projects, and core school investment projects throughout the district. So this will be done in accordance with the Washoe County School District's capital improvement plan for major projects, and also Washoe County School District's capital renewal plan for critical repair projects that are recommended by the Capital Funding Protection Committee and then come to you for approval. So I think this is one of those silver linings that we've seen through this pandemic, is that we've been able to stay on course with all the construction projects and repair projects. I mean, it hasn't been easy. There was a lot of hits, here and there, but I mean, we've been able to continue going forward. And I really thank the construction community for their work in that. So the other part of that in facility management, because there's really 2 parts. There's the capital project side and there's the facility management side when it comes to our custodial, housekeeping, and all of that, is to provide clean and healthy school environments with a focus on staffing stability. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that because you're going to hear me say that under every one of these is staffing stability. So I'm going to kind of come back to that in a little bit, but I really got to give a lot of kudos to the custodians and housekeeping staff throughout this pandemic of continually keeping our schools clean and sanitary through all of this with a lot of challenges when it comes to staffing. The second one is information technology to complete and begin implementation of the Washoe County School District Strategic Technology Plan. So as our Superintendent McNeil stated earlier, this really is going to focus on sustainability for technology for students and staff. And the second part of that plan is going to be coming back to you here soon to talk about the focus on devices and what that means for our district. We know the added importance of technology as we've entered this pandemic time of what it means for technology for our students and staff. And so I think there's a lot of good work going on in information technology, and you're going to be hearing more of that in the meetings to come. Nutrition services, to provide nutritious meals to our students while focusing on financial recovery and staffing stability through continual assessment of operational processes and strategic investments. So as Mr. Mather said at the budget workshop, I think this was another good news story. Through the hard actions that the board had to take and through the federal stimulus that we're seeing, I really do feel that we've kind of turned a corner. And our director, Leonka Solis, is going to be putting together some updates for you that kind of takes us through the end of last year, through December of 2020, to really kind of talk about where we've been, or December of 2021, I'm sorry, 2020, to really talk about where we were as a district and kind of where we're headed. And so that's going to be in the superintendent's highlights coming up. So we'll make sure to get that information out to you. But I really do feel that we have kind of turned a corner, but we don't know what the future is going to bring. We don't know what the federal support will be in the future, but I think we can really rest assured that Leonka and her staff have done just an amazing job of stabilizing this ship. And so I think we're in good shape moving forward. And then transportation to provide on-time delivery of students while focusing on workforce stability. Now, I really kind of want to mention this one specifically when it comes to workforce stability, because as I've said, all of our departments are having their challenges in this, but I think probably the hardest will be transportation. When I met with our teams last week and just kind of always ask for an update, because I think this brings a lot of stress to our operational teams, is just the staffing levels. Transportation was down 62 positions, nutrition services was down 37, facilities management was down 54. So we've been working with our incredible HR department. They're planning on virtual hiring fairs, but just this uniqueness of the situation we're in right now makes it difficult, to do the hiring process and to attract people. And obviously people, are concerned for different reasons, whether it's their health and safety and just different items. I think we're struggling to really be able to attract a lot of people right now. And this was an issue in transportation before the pandemic came, but the pandemic has definitely amplified it. And so whether it's people that have on exclusions or leaves of absence for different reasons, or just open positions, this is a continual struggle that we will have to be looking at in this recovery phase. But I think it's going to be a long-term item that we're going to have to focus on, not just for the next couple of years. I think this is kind of a trend when we're seeing the home prices in the Truckee Meadows. We're seeing just a shift of, I think, demographics a little bit. We're going to have to really focus on what it means to fill these operational positions. It's different than it was in 2010 or 12, where we saw we were in an economic situation, but we saw so many people applying for these positions because they just wanted to get a job. We're not seeing that right now. Honestly, we're really not seeing that. And so we'll continue to focus on that. But that's kind of the highlights of where the departments are going to be focusing the next couple of years, and be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Pete. I see a few. We're going to go with Andrew and then Diane.
Thanks, Angie. And thanks, Pete. I know at a previous board meeting, I had mentioned, and everyone agrees that in COVID pandemic time, after COVID, what we're doing for kids is not possible in the building without these departments. It's just not. And so I definitely appreciate all the work you're doing, and not just a recovery from COVID, but in the next 2 years, we're going to have 3 new facilities opening at O'Brien, Inskeep, and Hug. We have the remodel at Swope. And so facilities is going to be busy with that. You have transportation with new zones, nutrition services, it's a new school over at Inskeep that's added on. All the staff and information technology, they're getting laptops ready. It's been quite a lift for these departments, and a lot of times they're behind the scenes and people may not see exactly what's going on with these units. And so I think it's always important to highlight these departments, because if these departments weren't doing what they're doing right now, I don't know how we would be able to have schools open. We probably wouldn't be able to. And so definitely appreciate all the staff that are doing tremendous work in these areas. And as a board, whatever we can do to be supportive of these units, I know all of us would be willing to do what we can for them. And so it looks like you got a good handle on this, Pete. So I really appreciate your efforts on this to lead these units, as well as all the staff, Adam and Leonka and et cetera. So thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Diane?
Concur, Andrew. Yes, that's a good reminder, because an analogy for these 4 areas are like the front line of the football team. You know, you never really see them and you never really see their name in the paper, but if it weren't for them, nothing else would happen. Having said that, I wondered earlier when we looked at goal 2, highly effective personnel, and I'm sure there's a reason, because I know administration, the leadership team has many deep dive discussions, but it almost seems to me that given the numbers you gave us, Pete, why are they missing these other support staff operational positions? It appears to me to be missing from goal 2.
I'm not sure if I'm the best to answer that, but Kristen, do you want to take that?
No, I'll jump in, and then if Emily wants to. And that was exactly the reason why, Trustee Nicolette, I mentioned that when I was talking about goal 2, that it really is, you know, obviously a lot of it is around retention for our teachers as well. But I spoke about our principals, but then also our support departments as well too. So goal 2 is not just for in the classroom. It is really over encompassing human capital throughout the school district. Emily,
So,
I don't know if you want to add on.
May I suggest that there be another 4th bullet, since human capital truly is the engine? Maybe there can be a 4th bullet with the intention of whomever reads this document and however we discuss this document, that is very clear. It's not something that has to be assumed. It's there, it's intentional.
Kristen, you had asked Emily to weigh in. Did you want me to pause for that, or get other input from the trustees?
I don't know. I see Emily's name there, but I
She may
did.
have stepped away.
Yeah, I did take your note, Trustee Nicolette, as far as the 4th bullet, and I'm thinking that you're talking about goal 2 as the 4th bullet.
Correct. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, let's have Jeff and then Andrew once again.
Thank you much. Regarding the recruiting, I won't beat a dead horse because I brought it up earlier, but yeah, so many agencies are not being very innovative in the recruiting aspect. I did on the break text to the PhD in California that basically wrote the book, and he is available. Regarding the facilities management, absolutely yes on completion of current capital projects. That said, and I'm not suggesting we stop building, don't panic, but any good program, any good plan needs to be reevaluated occasionally. So many changes. Nobody expected what was going to happen. Nobody expected the drop in enrollment. We have to make sure we have the staff to put in any new buildings. And I understand that on February 10th, there's going to be a meeting for myself and possibly the other new trustees, if they want to go on capital projects, where some of those questions can be reviewed. But I'm just saying that we didn't know, any good plan has to be reviewed. And are we on track? Do we need to adapt, improvise, overcome? And so there needs to be a discussion of that periodically. WC1 was 2016, so that was 5 years ago. So any good plan should be reevaluated, periodically. So thank you very much.
Yeah, quick comment on that, Trustee Church. I absolutely agree with you. I think, when we talk about the short-term recovery, we're talking about finishing the projects we have underway. We have obviously a lot of critical repair projects in our schools that need to be completed, and we're going to focus on those. I think when you look at the future of master planning, whether you're a city, county, or a school district, everybody's going to be looking at what facility planning means for the future. I mean, the pandemic has brought changes in our society. We all see that. We don't know what the future means. I think everybody is going to have those conversations. What does facility planning look like for the future? What will our schools look like? I mean, will there be more work from home options? Do we need the same admin spaces before? I think all those questions are going to be addressed as the year or two go by, and everyone's looking for what the future is. Now, we submit a 20-year plan to the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Agency that gives our best effort of what the future looks like for our schools, so that everyone in the community knows and they can see that in a very transparent way. We'll be continually updating that plan as demographics change, numbers change in different areas. But I'm looking forward to having those discussions going forward of what facilities are going to look like as we move forward.
Thank you. And, again, I'm not against building. This is my Bible, our annual CAF here. Some of these schools, 1955, well, I won't tell you where I was in 1955, 1958, 1960, 1957. So I recognize the need to, that those schools have outlived their usefulness, and we need to address that. So I just want to make that clear.
Excuse me, I appreciate that, Jeff. I think that's noteworthy, and one of the things that with some of the small print, if you will, as one of the trustees, as the I guess only trustee was here when WC1 was passed, was that the building will follow the people, not the other way around. We won't build someplace and then say, hey, people are gonna come. The building will follow, and I see Pete nodding there. And so that's basically what you're saying. So that was inherent. That was in there inherently. That one of the consultants that we brought in really made that very clear. One of the early ones, I believe, Pete, made it very clear that that's the role that we want to do, is look at where the people are going, and then not be reactive, but be responsive to that, as opposed to just jumping out someplace because there's some land. So point well made. It may have been in some small print in there somewhere, but that's certainly been on the radar, because I think that's important. Things change. Things do, and I think our community would expect us to do that, by the way, and not just build a school because we have some property, because the builder gave it to us when they built a community out in wherever, right? And you'll see, if you've noticed in the past, and maybe even some upcoming, there are times when we sell land because we got this land, we thought we were going to build a school there, we don't need a school there now, and so therefore let's sell the land. So that happens as well. So that's out there. It's out there, but it's always good to have a reminder. So thank you for that. All right, Andrew, you're up. And thank you, Pete.
Thanks, Angie. And go along with Jeff was saying, we're kind of going to enter that phase, because HUG was like the last big project. HUG O'Brien and Swope opened in 22, and after that, there hasn't been any active discussions about the next step. And so that will be the natural reset point after the next 2 years. Pete, the question I had for you, I was curious, maybe if you can give the board some insight, that in these 4 areas, maybe not all 4 of them specifically, but maybe in general, over the time of COVID, have you learned anything about these departments of new ways to operate, things that you were kind of forced into because of COVID that you like and you think going forward it's made the operation better? Because I do think in some areas there have been some things learned that can be useful going forward. I'm curious if you are noticing any of that.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I think there's been some challenges, but there's also been some learning opportunities. I think even in nutrition services, looking at how they had to adapt to distance learning and providing meals to the community. I was interviewed yesterday by a kind of a national organization asking our input on that. And I said, I think we're like everyone. We're trying to figure out what the future means, but at the same time, take advantage of things we've learned. And I think that even getting the staffing levels right in our schools, I mean, that was an incredibly hard decision by all of us, and including you, the board, on having to right size our organization based on the meals being served at our schools. I think we're becoming more efficient in many ways. And I praise the employees and the staff for what they've done to make that work. I think going forward, we can only benefit from that. Transportation, I think, has been the hardest hit just because, you can change the levels of service when it comes to nutrition services. It may not be good because we're closing a lunch line and maybe not as many kids are going to say, I want to stand in that line to get food. Or in facilities management, unfortunately, when we've only been able to fill about 25% on a daily basis of the openings because we just don't have the staff, available, kind of sub-staff to fill those positions. So you change the level of service sometimes, unfortunately, then the schools may not have their carpets cleaned as often. But the one you can't do that with is transportation. You're either picking the student up and taking them to school or you're not. The only thing we've been able to do is to have to unfortunately do those double runs where kids are having to get to school early, then the bus goes back and gets some more and comes back. That's my biggest concern. I'm not sure if we've learned anything from that, except that something maybe I've always known is our staff is incredibly flexible and they are incredibly hardworking, and they just keep providing and they keep coming up with solutions. And I think those, I just can't say enough about them. I really can't. As I told the person yesterday with Nutrition Services, I wouldn't trade my team for any in the nation, and I talked to other COOs and I just realized how blessed we are here at Washoe County School District with the staffing that we have. So that probably isn't something I've learned. I've known that, but I've seen it just exemplified here this past 10, 11 months. And so there's probably more than that, Trustee Cottle, but I mean, those are the things that really just strike me up front.
No, I appreciate that, Pete. Thank you.
Jeff, your hand is still up. Do you have another question or comment, or it's just up? Nope, we're good. No worries, no worries. Okay. All right, that sounds good. Pete, thank you so much for your work. All of you, in fact, Emily, for chiming in. It's just a reminder that we have really good people.
So I was really good. President Taylor, just touch base really quickly on goal 2 as far as neglect. So I see Emily has popped up.
Okay, great. Thank you. I forgot.
Everyone, I'm back. I'm sorry that I missed that part of the discussion.
So Emily, it was really, so in relation to goal 4 and our operation departments here, how does goal 2, so to what Pete was talking about retention of employees, how does goal 2 relate to goal 4 with operations?
Absolutely. So, as a part of the kind of core critical function of our department, we look at metrics around fill rates and retention anyway. And so, I think continuing to hold my department accountable for those metrics, in addition to the focus areas that I talked about earlier, I really see recruiting and retention as sort of our core critical operations.
Thank you, Emily. And I absolutely agree. I see it in there. What I'm afraid of is that, really the only employee that we identify is the guest teacher. And that's extremely important. Every employee is extremely important. What I would like to see reflected, and I'm sorry I didn't say this earlier, I was waiting until we got through the other goals. What I would like to see reflected in highly effective personnel is I guess, more acknowledgement of the breadth and depth of employees that you have to work so hard to recruit and retain and educate and develop. And I really only see one group there, and that's guest teachers. So I don't want to tell you how to rework it or if you should rework it. I just would really, for future discussion and anybody reading this and anytime we have to talk about it, I would like to see more reflection of the incredible, vast experience of staff that we have throughout our school district. And I trust that you know how to do that best.
Thank you. I'm just taking some notes here. Dr. McNeil, if it makes sense, probably you and I and maybe the members of ELT could have additional conversations about the best way to capture that in this plan.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of, go back to what we were talking about is these are very, very high level, 70,000 foot level strategies that we felt were really important during this bridge year or this response to recovery. It's not absent or exclusive of other goals, right, and metrics within the strategic plan. These were just very high level strategies that we felt that we really needed to have front and center. And guest teachers has been an area of struggle for us for many years. So that was something that kind of floated to the top. It is not meant to peel apart any other, employee group, Trustee Nicolette. It was just that these are the high level strategies that we felt we really needed to hit and provide some investment into the next couple of years.
Thank you for that. And I totally agree 100%. When I think of a 2-year plan, I just want to ensure that there's a little more coverage in especially personnel. Nothing happens without people, right?
That is very true.
What I was going to add in is, Kristen, as you and Emily and the team take a look at it, I do think it's that we want to be mindful. We can't prioritize everything. And I think that's part of it. And the next 2 years, what are the single most important things or things that are specifically mentioned in the plan? This is what I hear from you. Not that other things aren't, and so maybe there needs to be a statement surrounding that, right, in there, so that if people want to see themselves, and because everyone wants to see themselves on the priority list, right? We're just human. But if it isn't there, at least there's something that says, it may not be specifically pointed out, or my area, or my department, or my effort, or my initiative, because there are a lot of those things missing, quite frankly. It doesn't mean they aren't important. But it doesn't mean that we aren't paying attention to you, or we aren't it doesn't mean you aren't going to give any love, so to speak, during this time. But I do recognize that what you're trying to do is say, in the next 2 years, these are the things that are going to have the highest priority. And everything can't have the highest priority, right? There are other priorities, but everybody can't be highest. And so maybe that's part of the conversation you can have with your team is how do we do that in such a way that people don't feel necessarily excluded, but there's still some things that are going to just be at the top because we're in the response and recovery mode.
No, I appreciate that very much, Dr. Taylor, and that's exactly right. And our team has had conversations, even irrespective of our thought around a 2-year response to recovery. Just in a regular strategic plan, not everything is seen all the time within within a regular strategic plan. And so how do you build those initiatives and that responsibility that everybody is a part of this plan? You may not just see something that's, exclusive or respective to your particular department. So that absolutely has been a discussion as well too.
Yeah, and I think, and I certainly understand. I think what Diane is asking about is there some way that we can that shows up somehow so that people don't feel like they're just not important at all? And I don't know if that's the case, because again, I do recognize everything cannot be the highest priority coming out of a pandemic. It just can't be. So just how do we do that in such a way? Because I certainly understand it. So we don't want people to think that they aren't important people or programs or initiatives that we know are critical. Like, for an example, the medical team that we know we have that's done an amazing job, they don't show up on here. But we certainly don't want them to think they don't matter, because, man, where would we be without them? Even going forward, who knows what the heck that's going to look like? They aren't here. But how do we make sure? I mean, so that I just use as an example, as it doesn't mean something isn't important or whatever, but what are the things that are the highest as we recover and try to respond? So just something that might help you in your conversations when the team gets together. And how do we reach that unique balance? Not saying everything is the highest priority, because no one's going to believe that anyway, because that's impossible. given some consideration that, we know everybody matters and we couldn't do it without them.
I think one of the other things to consider is that as we drill down into exactly what these look like or what the specific deliverables or metrics are, we may start to see some of that reflected in those. And so, for example, when I think about recruiting, there is very definitely a nexus between unfilled positions and stress in the department. And so if we go back to that second bullet around employee mental health and wellness, when there are prolonged vacancies in a department, we know that that contributes to additional stress in that area. And so as we continue to refine what these bullets look like, that's where you might see some of those more specific metrics around recruiting or retention or other typical HR metrics reflected in support of those larger goals like employee mental health and wellness, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. So we just look forward to, as you guys can work with that a little bit, and then you're right, some of those steps along the way, that will help, right? Help really identify what it kind of looks like a little bit, in a little bit more detail for folks. All right, looks like we're good here. Shall we move on to goal 5, safe and welcoming schools?
Perfect. All right.
Thank you, Pete.
We've got Dr. LaMarca, and then we also have our Chief of Police, Jason Trevino.
Hi, this is Paul again. I think I'm starting. So this first bullet, through deliberate, family-centered, and culturally responsive practices aimed at building connection and relationship, foster a community-wide sense of school belongingness and a sense of self-worth and efficacy amongst students and teachers. I want to point out that this particular bullet, high-level point, is very similar to what was listed under goal 3 in terms of family engagement. And I want to say that the way these are worded, it could come across as if great things are not currently happening within our buildings along these lines. And that is not at all what is meant by this. Our principals, our teachers go out of their way every day to connect with kids, connect with families. And yet we see data that suggests to us that we have growth ahead of us with respect to these things. And so just like a PLC effort to enhance academic performance, we need to continue to get better at engaging our families. Our schools are at the center of our communities. Our schools are where many of our families feel most comfortable. And so creating an environment with them where they feel like they belong, where their students want to be, is critical, especially now when we know we've gone through this kind of collective traumatic experience. We're going to have to rely on our buildings as these community hubs. The second bullet is very similar to the second bullet that was under the first goal under academics. So this is about acknowledging the broader context within which learning takes place. Attending to basic needs in the social, emotional, and mental health of students, families, and staff in order to engage and challenge students meaningfully in academic opportunities. Again, this is fully consistent with the guiding principles that Kristen shared in advance of us getting into the goals. But what I mean by this, or what we mean by this, is if a child is hungry, they're going to have a hard time learning. If a family is experiencing housing uncertainty, food uncertainty, employment uncertainty, transportation uncertainty, those are significant stressors, and those will impact children. And we have to be sensitive to that. We need to make sure that basic needs, mental health, mental wellness needs are met so that we can get down to that critical work around academics. So that's all I've got to say at this point, and I think I'm turning it over to Chief Trevino now.
Okay. Well, good afternoon now, everyone. Thanks for having me. So just real quick, our item here, provide a safe learning environment based upon the beliefs of equity, inclusion, and access for all students, staff, and school community members. It really goes hand in hand with objective 5.2 and just kind of takes a little bit deeper dive into it. You know, my team, we've talked a lot about the challenges that we're going to have when school comes back into full session. You know, and we all have our fingers crossed that of course, is, you know, coming sooner rather than later. But with that, we understand there's going to be concerns. There's going to be, you know, a period of time where we have to get kids and adults used to being back in those buildings, and that's probably going to come with some hurdles. You know, when you go from having 50% capacity and then all of a sudden we go back to having 2,500 kids in a high school, there's a lot of different things that have to be navigated there. And so with this bullet point, we just really want to reiterate the fact that we understand that the world and our country, our local area, there's been a lot of things happen in the last year. There's been a lot of changes. Obviously, COVID's been a huge part of that, but there's been other things on the national stage as well that have an impact to our students. And a lot of times they bring those impacts with them to the school building. And we just want to ensure that everyone on our school building as a part of that school community understands that we as a policing agency are 100% there for their protection. We're there to help them. And we want them to know that we will always do that under that belief system of equity, inclusion, and access for everybody on that campus. And that's how we intend to fully police our buildings. And, you know, we want our kids back in the buildings. Our officers really miss them, and we're looking forward to having them back.
Thank you very much, Chief.
Okay. Go. Okay, go. Are you going to jump in, Dr. McNeil?
Probably just do what you were doing, just questions.
Yep.
Input.
Anyone? I see you, Jeff. Go right ahead.
Unmute. All right. I'm trying to think about how to phrase this. I don't even need a response, just something to ponder. I have 2 college degrees, and I read the first one, and I got the dictionary out online, and I don't quite get it. It's probably me. I don't need a response, but just the wording of it, trying to remember that the community is going to read this. I don't want to be, I'm not insulting. I'm just, I just didn't get it. You know, it's a long sentence.
Can I help a little bit? Like, but not in making it. No, not in making it clear. Not in making it more clear. As much as so really what you're saying is, now that we've had this discussion, maybe you understand what it means. But whether you do or not, right? It should perhaps be more clear for members of the community. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Remember that the community. They always say in my previous job, you know, write for about a 10th grader. And I just didn't quite grasp that even with the dictionary.
Okay, so it might need to be written in a little bit more layman's terms. Is that what you're saying? Do you understand what the bullet point is saying? Those 2 different issues. Do you understand what it's saying now that we've had the comments from Dr. Lamarca around it? Kind of, but you know, again, not 100%. No.
Which
again,
bullet?
Those are 2 different issues. He's talking about bullet 1. Okay. And really what we have is 2 issues. One, he's not quite sure what it says. He thinks he does. He thinks he gets it, but might not be. And then the second one is, if it isn't that clearly stated and such that even after us having a conversation, it takes a couple more questions, there may be, is there a clearer way to say that? Because those are really 2 things that he's mentioned.
If I might say, compare it to number 3, that's very clear.
Okay, yeah. Go ahead, Paul.
Oh, I think we're happy to clean up the language. I know I am. The idea was so we do a lot, and we're trying to capture it within not a super granular, but kind of a mid-level statement. And as I read it now too, I could revise both the first 2 bullets in multiple ways. If there's something specific though right now, Mr. Church, that you would like elaboration on, I'm happy to do that. I'm sure Dr. McNeil is as well. Okay, well, we can work on the wording for sure.
I think that would help clear it up, make it clearer so someone can read it. And you may as well look at number 2, since you said you already kind of had some ideas around that bullet. Go 5.2 to see if there may be a way to make it just a little bit more clear for those that don't do what you do every day and what we do most days. Okay, sounds good. All right, we'll go to Andrew and then Kurt.
Thanks, Angie, and thanks for the presentation. This is for Chief Trevino. I know I've said before, one of the best things I think about our police is the relationships that they build with our students, especially at the high school level. So has there been any discussion within your department about police officers essentially next school year when they're in their high schools, essentially checking in on students they haven't seen in a while, maybe students that they had that relationship with that maybe were on distance learning? Just, it's almost wellness checks, but just still building that relationship back up so we didn't lose ground in that community policing effort that you all take part in.
Thank you for that question. And absolutely, that is currently occurring. Our officers are very concerned about, some of the kids that they've worked really hard to build those relationships with, some of those kids that sometimes struggle. So yeah, the officers are definitely doing that outreach now. And like I said, some of those students are hard to reach with the 50-50 blended model. However, they are definitely looking forward to getting them full-time back in school so they can really cement those relationships. Absolutely.
No, I definitely appreciate that. I'm sure that'll be a point of emphasis for your team going into next school year, and I'm sure school staff will appreciate that. It's just that reentry could be kind of tough for some students because a year is a long time to be away from everybody, and you don't want to lose ground in those relationships. So thank you.
Yeah, and what I may add is it may not be a year, right? They may get back in a more of an attendance between now and the end of this school year. Things may begin to change and happen so that more kids are coming back now. So there may be that opportunity to reconnect. Chief, I know you know this. As soon as they walk through the door, whether it's next year or not, right? For your crew to do what they do. I would just add for new trustees, just that may not know this. What our police, I don't even like to call them force, right? A police department. In our school, they're much different than your quote unquote beat cop on the street, bust down the door, kind of whatever thing. Not that they don't go through post training, not that they are unable to do anything like that, because absolutely they have the same level of training and have to have it and have to have the post training to be able to do that. But it's the relationships that you hear people talking about now. It's the relationships that make a huge difference. You have to have a different kind of mindset because it's policing, but it's just a different kind of policing. In some cases, you're part police officer. Yes, you are, but you're part, big brother, big sister sometime. You're part counselor sometime. You're part, as the students need. And that I believe that served us well in the Washington County School District, and why I'm fully supportive of having our own policing effort, unit, whatever you want to call it, department, as opposed to there's some school districts that contract with local police. I love our local police. I have a lot of friends who've gone through it, love them, but it's just a different kind of policing. And I love the way that culture's there, and Chief Trevino reinstates and reinstills that culture, but I don't feel any less safe around those officers than I do around officers that might be your quote unquote officers on the street. So just a little background as to what the difference is and why some of those things that he says are so important for us here in our district. So, all right, Kurt.
Thank you, Angie. And I'll make a quick comment, and then I have to actually jump off to make my next appointment. I just want to thank the staff for all of this, and I'll watch the rest of the presentation later. But definitely thanks to Chief Trevino and Dr. LaMarca for this. I mean, you hit many points that are important to me. Food insecurity is huge. I mean, I was one of those kids who at times did not have money for school lunch. And we know that there are kids that have been at home and distance learning that may not be in the most accepting environment. And I think creating a safe, welcoming schools and making sure that kids are excited to come back, they're relieved to come back, they're looking forward to coming back, they have things to look forward to, seeing their friends, seeing their teachers, getting back to a sense of normalcy, I think is going to be crucial, not just in this next year, but in the next few years. To getting them back on track and to a path of success. So
I think this is great. I'm really thankful that this is one of our main goals, and look forward to seeing this through together.
Thank you, Kurt. And I know you had surgery this week, so what a week for you. But thank you for still jumping on and being online this whole time. And you've gotten most of the meeting. We do have a couple slides up, as you know, but I know you have to take care of some medical things. So please do that and jump on. And if you have questions later, you know, you can always hit myself or the superintendent.
I'll do that. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Thank you. Drive safely out there.
Thank you. And I'll just
Dr.
add
McNeil?
quickly, yeah, absolutely. And I'll just add, you know, to goal 5, we've talked a lot today about as our students return. And we know that as our students on a hybrid model, you know, it looks really good on paper, but that model has some significant challenges with it. And one of those challenges is having students on an A schedule and a B schedule, and those relationships that they have been used to in a classroom, in a brick and mortar when they are together. And so even though our students are able to communicate via social media, they have not really had that opportunity to have that touch and that social interaction. And so when Dr. LaMarca talks about having our students be able to come back into the buildings, and as Chief Trevino mentioned, those relationships with our officers, that is something that we are all going to be having our front and center on our mind, as particularly for our secondary students when our students do return, because those social relationships are still happening, but they're happening in a virtual world. And so it's really important for that connectedness to be in person. And what does that mean for our students? And I also go back to something that Trustee Cottle brought up when we're talking about our little ones, and having our little ones have that experience in the classroom and what that means. So just a lot of work to do around that when we get all of our students back into our buildings. And I think we are going
All
to.
right. Thank you for that. I had to give a little instruction. The delivery's coming. So, all right. So yeah, we can move on. Dr. McNeil, please. Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions, comments for goal 5? Are we all good? Perfect. All righty. Let's advance the slide. And we are here. We are at our profile of a graduate. This is something that our entire team has truly embraced, and we're very excited about it. We haven't really been able to get to where we want to be with our profile of a graduate, and we know that there are districts across the country who have embraced this structure as well. And so I want you to visualize, when we talk about a pathway, a profile of a graduate from pre-K to 12th grade, and those competencies that our students are going to be meeting along that pathway. And what is it that we are going to want to have that promise of a graduate as they leave the Washoe County School District? So earlier we talked about college and or career, but making sure that our students are ready when they exit our system. And so Ben has really taken this under his wing, and so he's going to be able to show you a couple of slides that really what a profile of a graduate is. So Ben.
Thank you, Dr. McNeil. May I share my screen again, JJ? So I think, well, real quickly, I think what you see in that first bullet point, enduring vision, I think is a really apt way to describe it. It really is kind of us going to the community, us going to the trustees, or the trustees and alongside us going to the community, to our students, to our families, to our educators, and really fleshing out what the promise will be to our district when our kids cross the graduation stage. What competencies will they have? We've made really great strides, I think, over the last decade on graduation rate. And I think what helped with that is the tremendous, obviously, amount of work that the schools did. But I think the moniker, Every Child by Name and Face to Graduation, helped personalize it. And I think that this will kind of take that to another level. It will kind of personalize it, but also make sure we're arming these students with the best tools to succeed in college and careers, and to make our community better. So all of that being said, I think we're going to have to do a really good job communicating the vision and what we mean by kind of the WCSD promise or the portrait or the profile of a graduate. So I'm going to show you one quick website from a school district in a different school district than us, and I really like how they've organized it. So what they call it a profile of a learner. We haven't obviously come up with a perfect name for it yet, and I know that the board will be part of that when we launch into it. But I think this describes kind of the vision of what they want a profile of a learner to be, and the way I envision it and communicating it with our district is kind of coming up with a website like this that will, if you click on any of these kind of critical things that their graduates have, it'll really explain the vision and what they mean by, so for example, a learner profile. They'll list the outcomes here, demonstrates academic literacy, reading, writing, math, science, and social studies, which is very much akin to the essential standards that Dr. Parks talked about earlier. But then it also describes other social and emotional things. So for example, self-directed, self-management, perseveres, and things like that. And it would go through each one of kind of what we come with our essential or our kind of real competencies that we want our portrait. So this is just an example of what they'd say for a collaborator profile. But again, going back to kind of the user friendliness of it all, we really want to communicate what do we mean by the WCSD promise. And so what this site did, and I really like it, you can hover over a critical thinker or an innovator, what the components of that profile of a learner have, and you can really see what kind of outcomes we're looking for along that. And then certainly underneath that, we'll have some kind of metrics to say how we're doing as a district in building that kind of pathway to make sure that students are getting their competencies. So for example, if we have advanced math in 5th grade, then we can really articulate and codify what we mean by advanced math and say what percentage of our 5th graders are ending the year with those competencies in place. So again, I think just the big idea here is we want the community to be along with us, the leadership team and the board of trustees, in this notion of a WCSD promise. But we want to communicate it really well. We want people to understand it, and we want to be able to be, again, transparent and user-friendly. This is what we mean by the WCSD promise all along the pathway in 1st grade, 3rd grade, 5th grade. And this is how we're doing as a system. So I know that was pretty quick. So I know Dr. McNeil has been working on this for a few years, and I've been very enamored of the notion of it. So we'd be more than happy to take questions.
I just want to say, I think this is wonderful.
I was just going to say, okay. I see you. Go. And I see you next,
Sorry.
Andrew. Go ahead. That's all
That's
right.
okay. Go ahead. Oh, I'll go ahead. I'm on.
No, you go ahead. Yes. Then Andrew. Yes.
This is wonderful. I know that previously at TMCC, we talked about this in certifications. We talked about what is our promise, what is our guarantee to the community. For example, if we have a certification that's in healthcare, a phlebotomist, what exactly can an employer and the community expect from this person that we graduate with that certificate? And I see this as a step in that direction based on our essential learning standards that I think this is wonderful. And if I may ask, Evergreen School District, does that happen to be in Colorado? Where is that? I want to go find it.
That's a very good question. Let me look it up. I might not be able to look it up really fast.
That's okay. While he's looking, you can go ahead. You can just zip it out to us if you would, and we'll have it. Andrew, go ahead. You're next, sir.
Thanks, Angie. I really like this. I think for a while now, our district has really focused in on graduation. And I think at times it was, well, how are we going to get there? What are we actually looking to do? What do we want our students to have when they get to graduation? And this is the target. It's easier to hit your target when you know what your target is. And I think the whole organization can get around this from kindergarten all the way up. And because I mean, we've talked about this quite a bit.
the whole organization's a part of this. All elementary schools, everyone's a part of this because you build up to it. And then they have those skills. And then when they launch out of the school district to whatever they want to do, they have the skill set to take it from there as young adults. So I'm a huge fan of this. I'm looking forward to future discussions on this, and I hope the whole organization can really rally around it and also have input in it. I think that'll be really important.
I'm just going to add, to not repeat what's already been said. I agree wholeheartedly. I think it's great. It gives a snapshot of what it means when we say every child by name and face to graduation. This isn't something that's nebulous, that's out there. And especially, you know, I have a saying, people support what they help create. And as people have an opportunity, the team internally have an opportunity to build this together, right? Take all the things that you guys take that you know should be a part of those, all those links, should they be hot links in ours, just like they are with them, right? People get a chance to create it, and then you have a chance to have buy-in into it. And now it's like, this is what we do collectively together. This is, someone said earlier, in our Zoom, I think it was you, Chris, and like this is just like the WCSD promise. We're promising that to do it as best we can in these areas for your students as they come through. So I love it. I think it's fantastic. I think the community's going to love it. I hope our team internally does. Educators, something they can be a part of, and then rally around and say, okay, that's our target.
Real quickly, and don't mean to birdwalk. Evergreen School District is in San Jose, and there's another one called Saline, and that's in Michigan. That I think is a really good example, and I'll make sure they're going to the superintendent highlights this weekend.
Perfect. I was just going to say that. If we get some links into that, we can check them out. Fantastic. Oh, and we have a guest, Ellen. We have a guest who's joined us for the meeting.
Did Ellen have a question?
No, I think she just had a guest.
Oh, okay.
It got my attention because I saw a different color, but it's like, oh, that's a guest. That's not a hand, that's a guest.
Oh, okay.
He's very needy at this very moment, of course.
Well, he's done a good job. He's been very patient while we've been on the Zoom for these hours, so he deserves a little love.
All right.
All right, that's fantastic. Kristen, you want to go ahead?
No, absolutely. And, you know, in the state of Nevada, actually, and maybe Ben, you can add that one too. Churchill County uses a profile of a graduate as well too. So just a lot of work around this still to be done, but we really wanted to just kind of give you a taste of what we're looking at. And then in conjunction, obviously, with the redo of the website, this is going to be a big part of that, so that we can get community input on what that would be like too.
Great. That should take us right into community outreach, huh?
Yep, exactly right. Nice segue.
Oh, there's the promise. That's where I got it from. It's on the bullet point. Ha!
All righty, and we have Megan, and she is up and ready to go.
Great. Hi. And we can go to the next slide. So I was just going to briefly highlight sort of what we would work on to get this, share our response to recovery plan out with the community. The idea being we want feedback, we want community buy-in, we want as much input as possible. So we'd of course be going through our student voice group to get that important student feedback, employee forums, and we can hold those virtually for the time being, community town halls, just so we get that outside perspective. Of course, we'd be interested in, perhaps with the chamber membership or EDON or other important groups, community group roadshows. And what I mean is similar to that. So like a realtors group or, specific business groups. We've had some success meeting with NV Energy employees, that type of thing. So, and we have a good, strong multi-faith group in town, just perhaps leveraging our leadership and our trustees to go out and meet individually with these groups and have bigger conversations about kind of what our strategic goal is for the community and what we're working on, and be able to relay a lot of this. Of course, media briefings, we've had real success with those on our weekly basis with Dr. McNeil and President Taylor. We can continue those or schedule one that is specifically devoted around the importance of community input when we talk about these plans, and leverage, some of our community partnerships to help us get input. Of course, we'll continue our social media campaigns, and we can find creative ways of sharing aspects of the plan and getting feedback on certain areas. And then, of course, collaborating with the Office of Accountability, that will be key. As Ben mentioned, a lot of the, looking at the portrait of a graduate and how we're going to kind of coincide together, working on a community survey to really get the input of, hey, are we on the right track? What else would you like to see? Is this going to work for our community as a whole moving forward? That's what I have for that slide. I don't know, Dr. McNeil, if you wanted to move to the timeline at this point.
Go ahead, go ahead. You can see your legs.
So again, this is very draft, but we're thinking specifically for this response to recovery plan. Of course, we're hoping that today we've shared a rough draft with you, talked about some of our top goals and how that's going to work with the overall picture of the district. We had talked about potentially getting your input today, and if there's a need to come back to the board, perhaps in another work session or at a meeting, we can of course make that happen to show you kind of how the staff has progressed with any edits or additional pieces that you'd like to see, just to get that ready to go out to the community. So we're thinking, as you can see from this, and again, this is a draft timeline, but in the March, April timeframe, can't really make it just March just because we have to think about that spring break aspect and how our families will be out for about 2 weeks. But over March and April, doing all that I just talked about in the previous slide. So really launching our community engagement campaign, getting out there to as many places as we can, talking about our goals, and then of course, getting that survey into the hands of all of our stakeholders so they can truly give us our feedback and we can work to aggregate that. And then for the purposes of this response to recovery plan, we would hope that, and Vanjie, chime in if I'm wrong, but that it would show up in a June board meeting for your final approval that would include all of that community input, any edits that were needed to be made based on community priorities. But in conjunction with, and Dr. McNeil may talk about this a bit more, the Bell schedule, how will that work? Because I believe the implementation piece is correct. So the Bell schedule would be for the 22-23 school year, but we need to work much earlier to get that community input nowish or very soon. So it's all going to happen together, and we're going to have to work on what that message looks like and how work on really clarifying the pieces that we're working on so that we don't confuse the community.
Thank you, Megan. And importantly, as we've talked about in our one-to-ones, this was another one of the reasons why we did not feel that it was appropriate at this point in time to go out with a brand new strategic plan, because as the board has taken action for getting community input on a possible revamp of a Bell schedule to be implemented in the 22-23 school year, we want to be cognizant of what that means to our community. As you all know that have been here for a while, changing a Bell schedule is a tremendous shift for our school district. It's akin to changing school calendars. And so we still need to be able to get that community outreach plan in place for this spring. We are tentatively scheduled to come back to you all in May with what that data looks like as far as community outreach and the options that have been presented. You all have seen the PowerPoint that was presented to the board back in June. And so in conjunction with that, then getting out the community input as well for a 2-year response to recovery plan. And so again, to Megan's point, this is just a very, very drafty timeline, not with a lot of detail in it, but for that particular reason. So happy to answer any questions or take input as well.
Andrew. Thank you, Dr. McNeil and Megan. Andrew.
Thank you, Angie, and thank you, Kristen and Megan. After reviewing this entire plan here in the presentation today, I really like it. I know seeing a few work sessions last year that we could try to get in, because this was going to be the big lift before COVID, the strategic plan. And it felt like it was going to be too much to try to do right now than the Bell schedule on top of it. So I'm a big fan of the 2-year recovery, because we know that's what it's going to be. It would be really hard to launch a full strategic plan that's 5+ years, knowing that there's a recovery piece in it. So I really like this. The only concern I have, it's not really a concern, and you've already highlighted it, is trying to get this much community feedback in a very short period of time during this COVID era. So I don't know how. I think we just, as a district, need to be very careful about how we do that. I think the recovery plan, we need to get the input, but if you put them on a scale, the community is probably more interested in the Bell schedule. That's just without asking. That's what I'm just going to go on a hunch off of, because the Bell schedule impacts day-to-day lives of families, students, and staff. And so I don't think we have to pick one or the other. I think we just have to be careful we don't bombard them with the recovery plan and then hit them with the Bell schedule, and we feel like the Bell schedule response isn't as strong as we may have hoped, and that'll come back to bite us later on if we implement. So I think that's just something we have to really think about. But this plan specifically, I really like it, and I look forward to getting more of the data points of the plan later on.
I'm just going to concur. Really, thank you, Andrew. I'm just going to concur with that. Only thing that I might see a little differently is the Bell schedule is going to get a lot of attention anyway. We just don't want to do it in the summertime, right? Because then we know we have less engagement for obvious reasons. But even if the timing, and I know you're still working out details, even if the timing is that the Bell schedule input happens after response to recovery, we're going to get Bell schedule in engagement. So it may be done that way intentionally, again, as long as we avoid spring break and the summertime, because it is that big of a deal. But I certainly leave it up to you communications experts as to the timing of that, and I too just look forward to the meat on the bones around it. But neither of these are things that we want to go forward with without letting the community have an opportunity for input. Community and when I say community, I don't just mean external. I mean internal. Our internal partners and students, they have just as much of a concern about these things, and just as much at stake, just as much skin in the game on the 2-year response to recovery plan. But I do like it, and I applaud the work. Other feedback overall, or about the timeline and so on, Diane?
I'm excited to move forward, and I would absolutely agree. The response to recovery goals. I'm looking forward to the data and the Bell schedule. That, in previous, when you think about how the school calendar was changed, and that was a very challenging time. This is huge. The Bell schedule. Having said that, I think for most people, seeing a well-developed strategic plan with metrics that they can understand, that's going to be good stuff. That's going to be enlightening stuff. That's going to solicit really good conversation. The Bell schedule is going to solicit conversation, and we'll see what that means. So I'm all for it. It looks good to me.
Thank you.
All right. It sounds like this is what we have. Is there anything else you have, Dr. McNeil? I know that what you would like to do is to get a motion to move forward with the plan as outlined, and the suggestions, take into consideration the comments from the board as usual, as you typically do. But this will at least give the okay of the board to say yes, we like the direction We like where we're going, and let's get moving. And I see Andrew with his hand up.
Yeah, I can go ahead and make a motion unless Kristen, you want to say some words first.
No, I would love to have a motion.
Okay. I move the Board of Trustees directs the superintendent to move forward with the planning of the bridge recovery strategic plan for 2 years.
Second.
Discussion?
Discussion, just for you, a little clarification. Should we not say bridge because the last one was called bridge? Should we say response and recovery on that motion, Andrew?
Yeah, we can change it to response and recovery. I'm good with that.
Okay. This, Ellen, you're the second, you're good? All right, now that we have the motion clarified, yes, Jeff. You're muted, Jeff. You're muted.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, go.
The only discussion would be that we incorporate some of the input that was raised by the various trustees.
That was said, but that should be a part. That should be a part of the motion as well. I think that's good. We talked about it, but friendly amendment on that, Andrew. That we direct the superintendent to go forward and take into consideration the comments and the tenor of the discussion.
I'm good.
You're good, Ellen. You're good on the second. All right. Thank you for the sake of teams. Do we have any public comment on this, JJ, before we take a vote?
We do not.
We do not. Neil Jefflin, I thought you were sleeping. Thank you. All right, seeing no public comment, no further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposition? Talk about a big week. I mean, a budget work session, a almost 12-hour day for the trustees in the meeting, not counting whatever else happened leading up to the meeting, a state of education address, and certainly preliminary approval for the direction of a 2-year response and recovery strategic plan, which would be, that's all big stuff, which includes getting the bail schedule involved and so on. Just what a big week for you and your team, Kristen, an amazing job. I do think it's important, Megan, if you're listening from the communication end, is that we're very clear that a comprehensive strategic plan is forthcoming, but we have a 2-year, response to recovery. That's the focus on this thing as a result of that, because we don't want people to, and we didn't have a chance to have really big, input since 2015, and actually they did have it in 2015 as well, but people won't remember that. You know what I mean? Because it's important to get that input. So just so people understand, this is for this reason, and these are the things because of what we've been through in 2020 that we need to focus on for the next 2 years, and that means we aren't cutting off voices. We just, right now, this is what we have to do, and we go forward from there.
Thank you very much, President Taylor, and just thank you so much to the trustees. I know everybody's schedule, and my team knows that I love them, and they are the amazing team. And I'm sitting here with a group with board services in the boardroom, but we've got a big day tomorrow, and we have a big day today. We've got 400 employees being vaccinated today, and 700 being vaccinated tomorrow. So I know most of us are going to be out and about tomorrow, whether at Livestock or at Reed High School. So just again, just thank you to everyone, and wonderful workshop. And thank you all for your input and your awesome comments and help and support on getting us moving down this 2-year recovery plan. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody. So we will log off. We had any public comment as we end the meeting. We end with public comment. Any public comment?
No public comment.
No public comment. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Notice how the staff is popping back on now, right? They put their other stuff away. Okay. Let me get. Well, thank you to all of you guys. An amazing job, and thank you so much for capturing the tenor of the things that have been important to us as a board along the way. I mean, it's great to know that it's like, hey, you're here, we're listening, we're all working on this thing together, and it certainly gives me as one trustee just a sense of confidence in the relationship that we have working together. We want to do things with each other, not to each other, and this is a great sign that this can be done for the betterment of the district. So thanks to everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. Be safe if you're out there or going to be out there, whatever the case may be, and have a great week.